Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, Gwen. With me, as always, is Jared, and we have a very special guest today. We have Heidi from over at Costume Co., who has graciously allowed me over on her channel numerous times. So it's about time I return the favor. Welcome, Heidi. It's so great to have you.
Oh, Gwen, thanks so much for having me. And I'm such a pleasure in meeting Jared for the first time.
Yeah, no,
Likewise.
it's so great, and I've had so much fun with you because we've talked Andor, we've talked Night of the Seven Kingdoms, we've talked Oscars. And it's been a blast every time you've had me on. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, we were just talking about we're going to be doing House of the Dragon coming up, I guess,
Yep.
in June. This is so exciting.
Yeah,
That's like
I
a few
know
months
it's
away.
coming so fast.
Yes,
First, I want to address something that I brought up last week for people watching this because I'm a little bit like flip-flopping from one thing to the other. Last week I raised the notion that for the purpose of the streams, had been thinking about going back to using my given name, John, because I wondered if it felt more natural within the context of me geeking out about movies, because it's been such a part of my life growing up from when I was a little kid. And then we did the stream, and I thought it was okay, like during the stream, and then afterwards I realized no, it didn't feel really comfortable doing that either. So I've decided we're going to go back to Gwen, because that's how I'm comfortable now talking amongst my friends. So we're going to stick with that. Okay, that out of the way. This week, I'm really excited because we're starting the beginning of a journey that I have been wanting to do on this channel pretty much ever since I started the channel. But it's a big project, so it was all about finding the time. And then finally I was like, damn it, we're just gonna do it. And that is talking about one of my favorite shows, Outlander. And it's been a long journey for me, because I started watching this show back 12 years ago when it started. I didn't catch these first episodes when they first aired, but I did binge them in between the break between the first and second half of season one. So it's been a long time, and this was a show that I watched with my mom, and it's really the last show that's still currently airing that we watched together. So it has a very special place in my heart. But this is equally exciting because not only do we have Heidi on here, who you've seen some of the show, and then at a certain point I think you kind of fell off of it, so it'll be interesting getting your take on it. But also Jared, who had never seen the show before, and at my request is watching as we go along rather than binging as much of it as possible, because I really want to get his reaction to the show as it goes along. So yeah, I hope you'll forgive me, Heidi, if I start with Jared, just because I've kind of been itching to get his reaction to this. Hopefully you at least enjoyed it, Jared, and I'll just get your overall reaction too.
Overall, my reaction is I did really enjoy it. My reaction is going to be very positive, because this is a show that I always had a feeling that I would enjoy. The time was never right to start it. I think the big reason I did not watch it when it was originally, the first season was originally airing, was because it aired on Starz, which was a TV channel that I did not have access to at that time. And by the time I actually did, I think there were like 4 or 5 seasons in, and I was just like, that's a tall order. I'll get to it at some point. But I knew that one of the reasons been so eager to go on this journey is because I knew the basic premise of the show, and I had picked up a few details about it through cultural osmosis, some scant, plot details from later seasons with no context for them. But I had actually managed to remain remarkably spoiler-free about this show. And so when we kind of floated the idea of doing this project, because Gwen was always itching to talk about it. And I'm like, if you want to talk about all 7 seasons of Outlander, you're going to need to find somebody else. I can't I can't make that ask. But when we decided we're going to do it one season at a time or a half season at a time, I thought it would be a kind of a fun experiment because speaking of Game of Thrones, one of my favorite dynamics with podcasts like Game of Owns or The Night is Dark were those those watches where one of the hosts was what they would call sullied, i.e. they had read the books or they had seen the show before, and the other co-host was unsullied, where they, as they referred to it, where they had either never seen the show before or at least not read the books that the show is based on. And for me, I have neither read the books that this series is based on, nor have I seen the show except for the first 8 episodes that we have now watched. And I have to say that after these first 8 episodes, I'm in. I think that this is a really, intriguing premise for a show. It is obviously gorgeously made and beautifully acted. And overall, I have kind of some signposts as to where we are going. For the most part, I'm just kind of like Claire Randall. I'm like, I have no idea where this journey leads, but I'm hoping it'll be somewhere good. And so far, I have every confidence that that's the case. So obviously, I will be deferring to you two in terms of our hints about the larger context of the show. But I will just say from the first 8 episodes, we're off to a strong start.
Yeah, I will say no spoilers, but this is a show that over the course of its run constantly reinvents itself. So the show that it is this season is not the show that it is the next season, and so forth and so on, until about like season 4, where it kind of not to say the show doesn't like continue to evolve, but I think that's where it kind of finds its sort of like where it I try not to give anything away, but like in that sort of comfy spot where it resides, for the rest of its run. But it's part of what's fun about the show, and that's why when we get to season 2, like that's really fun how it even the opening credits like change, and like because we have a different vibe with it, and so yeah, but like I loved getting to revisit these early episodes because I think like even though I have loved the show like all throughout its run, I think this is still my favorite run of episodes, just because the story is the love story in these initial episodes, and there's other subplots, but that is like the core of it. And for the romantic in me, like you just can't beat that. It's so beautiful to watch. Heidi, I'm interested how you're coming to this. I know you told me, before the stream that you read the book years and years ago.
Yeah, I know. And it really, I feel it's funny, years ago. So I was working for this company, and my boss, like at the time, she loved the book series like so much. And so she lent me the first book, and it actually took me a while. Like, I think I was reading it. There's quite a bit of violence in it. And I don't know, maybe that might've been what kind of took me a little longer to read it. But, obviously, yeah, the love story. And so that's why it was really interesting, and then years later. So I'm thinking, because the show started in 2014, I didn't start my YouTube channel till 2016. So I'm thinking that I went back to look to see when I did the review of the costumes, and it was 2017. So I think I must have not, like Jared had watched it, because I didn't have Starz. I'm in Canada. So, but I think what had happened, if you can correct me, Gwen, if I'm wrong, I think it came that Netflix then picked it up, and I think that's when I started watching it. Does that sound correct? Like, Jared, did you watch it on Netflix? Is that how you watched it?
I mean, it's still, I think, airs on Starz as its first run, but yeah, Netflix now has the license rights to, I think, the first 7 seasons.
So I must have been, a few years behind. So one of the things I was just thinking about as you were talking is, what my thoughts were when I saw the casting. And I have to tell you, when I saw that Sam Heughan was cast as Jamie, he was actually better looking than I had pictured. Like, I was like, this guy, because first off, my father's a redhead. So when I imagined a redhead, I imagined more like a ginger redhead. Whereas Sam was more like auburn redhead, like Eric Stoltz redhead. I don't know if you guys know Eric Stoltz, but I'm dating myself. But he was in Caprica, which is another show that was done by Ronald D, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was thing. And then Caitriona, at first I was like, I don't know if she's beautiful enough. But then, of course, once I saw the show and saw her in it, she's extremely beautiful. But at the time when I think I saw some still images of her, like the one that you have on the screen there, I think I was like, oh, I don't know, because I just imagined her being just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. But of course, she is very beautiful. So yeah, so just my initial look how gorgeous she is. So just my initial thoughts, when you read a book and you have these ideas about what you think the person might look like, it's always interesting when that's cast, right? So as opposed to maybe watching the show first and then maybe going back and reading the book. So that's my initial sort of thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I actually think with the show being on Netflix, that was actually because I think they're sort of always like a couple years behind. So like I know season 7 was split up into 2 halves, and I think they have the first half of season 7 on there. So they're still waiting to get the second half, and then season 8 is running on Starz right now. So yeah, that's why like my godmother watches the show on Netflix, and like I always feel like I'm being a little cruel because like I talked to her on the phone and I was like, yeah, I just started watching the final season.
And she's scared. She can't watch it.
She can't watch it.
By the way, I was going to add one more thing, Gwen. The other thing is there's even though I dropped off, I think it was around season 4, I dropped off. But even though I dropped off, I started watching Outlander Blood of My Blood, which is like an origin story. So, and the reason for that is because I was going to interview the designer on that. So I did watch that first season, which is excellent.
Yeah. Which, Jared, you're not going to have to worry about that for a while. So we need to get through all the original show before you can be worried about that. But I will just say, a quick word on that. Like the vibes of that show are very like early seasons Outlander, which is why I'm loving it so much, because it's I think great to be back in those familiar locations.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, there are a lot of connections between the original series and that show, but I think you could watch it on its own and it would stand on its own. Yeah. Like even if you knew nothing about the characters or anything about the books, it has a wonderful story arc, but it is the ancestors of our main cast, so that's why it's
when I was watching these episodes, and I'm sorry, Jared, we'll get off this in a second, but like when I was watching this season, I was like, catching all the the allusions to like the previous generation of characters, and I'm like, oh, I've seen them now, and like, yeah, it's like them talking about this character and this this relationship between these people, like it just carries new resonance when you've gone through that with the prequel series. So yeah, okay, so we'll move on from that. Oh, and here I just realized I did not have a good enough picture of Sam Heughan on his own to really do him justice. And here you go. Yeah. No, I refer to Claire and Jamie as my babies because because they've been with me for so long and I love them so much. And yeah, I just adore them. And yeah, and that's probably a great place to start, actually. I think the cast of the show is just so absolutely incredible. And even though, like, I knew it might seem like natural to start with the leads, and you did a little bit of that, Heidi, but I thought, Jared, we'd start with our common like frame of reference to start off with, which is Tobias Menzies, who we know from Game of Thrones. And I'm really interested like what you thought of his double performance in this, because I just feel like if you're a fan of Tobias Menzies, this show is like just a feast. And I feel like he's been a big part of why this this first part of season 1 like is such a favorite of mine, because there's a version of this where Frank could have just been like, oh, the boring husband back in in modern times, and of course Claire falls in love with the rugged Highlander, and we don't actually care that much about Frank. But I think that part of what's so great about the way the show starts off is that you're really invested with the story of Claire and Frank, and it just creates this beautiful like love triangle throughout the season that just makes everything wonderfully complicated, and and heightens the emotions. I don't know. Maybe you were like, yeah, screw Frank. but that's always been my take on it. I'm interested how you felt about that and Tobias Menzies and his performance.
Oh, he was great. I actually think he has a case of giving perhaps the strongest performance in the show, even though it's all great actors all the way down. But yes, one of the reasons Outlander rose on my radar in the first place, even though I didn't get around to watching it, is the way my brain works. Anytime I see a Game of Thrones actor in anything else, I'm like, oh, Game of Thrones actor. I should clock that. And obviously, he has done many other things besides Game of Thrones, but that was the role that I was most familiar with him from. And Edmure Tully is not perhaps the most intimidating character in the world. He has a little bit of a reputation for as a ne'er-do-well, but I think that was what made this performance so evocative, was because I found his performance as Frank to be very empathetic and very loving towards Claire, and he like there could have been a compelling version where the show was just focused around them, and I'm sure we'll get more of them at some point, but his heartbreak at losing Claire in some of the later scenes I thought was excellent. But Blackjack, this is where I realized for the first time just how, because I'd heard this guy was kind of a bastard and he was pretty evil, but and we get that right from his very introduction. The moment when they're talking about his amusing nickname of Blackjack, and I'm like, how do you think he got that nickname? I bet he did some real bad stuff. And then we see
I love the fact that Frank refers to it as rather dashing nickname.
I mean, it is.
It's his ancestor.
It is like there's a version like if a character called Blackjack Randall was like in Pirates of the Caribbean, I would be like, oh, okay, but no. I actually think that he plays the darkness and the dangerous side of Blackjack so well, because it's there from the outset, but we know just like part of it is just the fact that he is a British officer and he sees these people as his enemies. And so in that respect, even though he's doing terrible things, it makes sense. And I'm sure we'll get to it. The scene in episode 6 where he is at the dinner table with Claire and he tells the story about flogging Jamie and like what it kind of unlocked in him, and the fact that he's playing it almost like he is recognizing that he is broken in some way, and Claire, obviously trying to make her way, you know, out of this situation, is extending almost a sense of empathy by saying, like, yes, you have that, like, you've done this terrible thing, but you have this sense of self-reflection, which makes you better than most men who could do such a thing. And he's like, yes, perhaps this is the time that I can, you know, set myself on a better path. And then it's revealed that it's all a manipulation, that he is just has no empathy. He has no remorse, that, like, I dwell in darkness, madam, and darkness is where I belong. And just the tear that falls upon her face when she realizes that this is a man who is truly, you know, has at the heart of darkness. I think back to Game of Thrones, funnily enough, when Edmure is in the tent with Jamie in season 6, and he looks at him and he says, you must know on some level that you're an evil man. And this is a man who effectively knows that he is evil. I also think back to another movie that we really love, Gwen, Kingdom of Heaven, with, you know, Brendan Gleeson's character Renaud de Chatillon, and him basically saying, I am who I am. Someone has to be. And I just think that this is a man who has chosen, you know, darkness, not only because he, you know, thinks it's the necessary path, but because on some level he thinks he has truly become who he was meant to be there. And that was where I was like, I think Tobias Menzies is absolutely killing it in this role. And obviously we get an echo of that later in episode 8, where not to skip right to the end, where once again it seems like he is Claire has managed to manipulate him and to like get him in a position where she has him on the back foot. And then it's revealed that no, he was holding the cards all the time. And the way that all of her strength leaves her and she just starts screaming, help, help. I was just like, a chill went down my spine. I'm like, this guy is fucking scary. And luckily, you know, Jamie's coming to rescue her. But if this is our adversary for the first part of the show, he's a very effective one.
Yeah, I just, like, coming off of knowing him from both Rome and Game of Thrones, where in Rome he's someone with, you know, it's a challenge to our usual perception of the character of Brutus, where he plays him in a very sympathetic light, but ultimately makes decisions that have repercussions. And then playing Edmure, where he's, you know, he's very hapless, but but he's like, you know, he's a good guy, and, you know, even if he says some dumb things.
But by the way, can I ask you guys, have you seen the meme that went around when Edmure is trying to speak in season 8, when they're all convening and deciding who should be their next king, and he has something to say, and then, like, Sansa shuts him up, and then uncle, and then there was this meme going around who's like, no, actually I do have something to say. I went through all of this because of you folks. I have the right to speak. And I kind of feel that they did Edmure a bit dirty in season 8.
Yeah, well, it's a different version of it, to a certain extent. It's a different version of Edmure than we get in the books. I think he's a little bit more of the butt of jokes than Edmure is completely in the books, but I feel like it was a lot of fun for Tobias to play that. And so and it is fun.
Yeah, because he's also, I haven't seen The Crown, but I know he was very I've heard he was critically acclaimed. Yeah, in The Crown as well.
He's really good in that. Yeah, but
I have to say, he's got to be, like, I don't know if they've done top 100 lists, top 10 lists of the most evil characters, but I think Jack Randall is probably he's really up there. I mean, like, I don't want to get Jared, if you're only seen the first 8 episodes, but, like, the depravity with this guy.
You haven't seen his worst. Yeah.
Oh my God. And then juxtaposed to Frank, who, like, you were just showing that picture of Frank looking down at Claire. It was a beautiful picture. And like you say, you don't kind of want to just go, oh yeah, no, it's got to be Jamie, because you do kind of care about Frank a little bit, and they've both been through so much coming out of World War II. And this is sort of like their first sort of opportunity to reconnect with each other. And I know she loves Frank, but I think she just loves Jamie that much more. I don't know if you can, like you said, it's a love triangle, right?
Oh, there's like, and I want to be careful how I thread this needle, because like I said, I don't want to get into like things that are said in later seasons, but but there are different kinds of love, and I think what she discovers with Jamie is extraordinarily passionate, and the kind of exciting love that perhaps is not necessarily part of the love she has for Frank, which doesn't mean it's lesser, but it is different, and I don't think she's ever experienced something like she experiences with Jamie. So she, well, yeah, how are you going to be able to resist Jamie Fraser?
I do think it actually is an interesting place that the show starts, because one of the things that, one of the reasons that Jamie and that Claire and Frank are in Scotland in the first place is because, as Heidi said, they were both in World War II, and they were separated, it says, effectively for 6 years. And one of the things that, that we get in Claire's voiceover is they're on basically like their second honeymoon, where it's their opportunity to get to know the persons that they became after they were apart for so long. Like, so even though they've been married for a long time and they love each other, in a certain respect, they are almost strangers to each other in this opening sequence. And that's why there's that, there's the beautiful scenes of them like starting to reconnect in the bedroom. The brilliant joke with the box springs that the Scottish housekeeper can hear at first when they're jumping on the bed. And she's like, what the hell is going on up there? And then when it settles into a more familiar rhythm. But I think it's pivotal that it happens now. The fact that that Claire and Frank essentially even, are, still trying to find their way back to each other after this long time away. And then that is the exact moment that Claire gets taken away to a different time and a different, man. And perhaps if this had happened at a different point in her life, she would not have been, in the position she was to fall so head over heels for Jamie. But her connection with Frank is different now. And I think that I think back to a line in a certain respect from Carol with where one of the characters is talking about love, and she first love, and then she says, and then it changes. And I think that kind of is what ultimately it seems like is going to happen with the love between Frank and Claire, because one of the things I do know about the later seasons is that Claire and Jamie ultimately wind up together. I think that Frank is probably not going to be in the picture for all 8 seasons. But you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But I do think that it's worth acknowledging what they had, in the beginning, and those flashbacks to their love before the war, to tell us that this was not like one of those, as is so common in that time, like a marriage of convenience or the like, or even like an arranged marriage. Like, these two married for love, and it just so happened that circumstances tore them apart, and then something else came along. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the show handles that, and in particular how the show handles Frank's feelings about it, because yes, I do think that one of the things that a lesser show or movie will sometimes do to justify somebody falling in love with someone who is not their spouse is to basically say, oh, well, their spouse was an asshole, so it's okay. It's a harder thing to actually show, as Heidi said, a true love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I was also going to add, Gwen, sorry, Gwen. I was just going to also add that the other thing is, well, first of all, because I've had 2 uncles that were in World War II, and like, you know, the stress, the postpartum, like what is it, post-traumatic stress, that comes out of that situation. And Claire wasn't like at home waiting for Frank. She was working. She was on the front lines, kind of like, you know, working. So that would sort of inform their sort of like, I guess those 6 years apart would inform who they are now as humans. And there was nothing that ever guaranteed that they would end up staying together, even if like she hadn't traveled through the stones. You know what I mean? Like it's possible they might have just gone their own way without a Jamie being there. Like we don't know that, right? So, but also, like I was just thinking, also, you have this magical force that has brought you to this realm, this other land. So that in itself is just like, okay, if you believe in the universe or what have you, it's kind of like, here you are. This is your soulmate. I mean, really, I mean, that's sort of how I would probably look at it. Okay, yes, Frank and I are like, you know, we love each other. We met through normal circumstances or what have you. But here I've been brought through into this magical realm, like I think it's 200 years before. And I have been presented this person who is most likely like my soulmate. So it's you know, pretty romantic.
Yeah,
and technically she's not married. She's not married to Frank because he hasn't even been born yet. So it's not even technically bigamy, right?
No, I mean that is, it is always amusing when Claire is trying to thread the the line of like, is your husband dead? He's like, he's not alive.
He's not alive.
So he's dead.
That might just be one of my absolute favorite lines from Galis, who she gets some prize ones.
I love Galis, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go into where her characters goes, but watch that one. But like, no, just the way she's like, so he's dead then. So good. But no, I love her. Yeah, and so yeah, and kind of as we're talking about all the characters, I just wanted to take a moment to like shine a light on Caitriona Balfe and her performance in the show. I just like, and I feel this way kind of about, particularly about both Jamie and Claire, but like these are characters who have been with me for 12 years now. And I feel like I've gone through their love story like all the way, you know, like, and just sort of lived and breathed it. And so like, you know, with in the case of Claire, I just feel like all of her sort of, you know, hopes and loves and heartbreak and, you know, everything she goes through, I feel it so intently. And Caitriona Balfe's performance is like nothing short of amazing. And I think she starts off pretty damn strong in this first season, but then she just gets better and better as the show goes on. And yeah, I just I just love constant exclamation of Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ.
Yeah.
Which is just one of my favorite things. And yeah, just like the way she sort of balances that love for both men and but also like, you know, there's the delicate parts of her performance, but also the immense strength when she is standing up to people who are threatening her. And that's whether it's obvious people like Blackjack Randall or in the case of some of the Highlanders like Dougal and Column, and you know, and the fact that, you know, she will plot and scheme to like get away, but then it'll be pointed out to her, actually, you didn't think this through quite well enough, because there's this thing that you haven't thought of, and she'll be like, and but yeah, the performance she gives over the course of the show is just one that is fierce and passionate and but vulnerable, and it's just been one of my favorite performances to watch over time. And I keep stressing the fact that this is a show that I started watching 12 years ago, and because that's not a small amount of time to live with a show. Yes, it's been 8 seasons, which, we're fans of other shows that have gone for 8 seasons, but to stretch over 12 years, that's a sizable portion of my life. And so I feel so connected to these characters and Claire in particular. And so yeah, I just, and I love that Jared and I are newly minted members of the Saturn Awards. And I sort of love that both Caitriona and Sam Heughan pretty much get the best actor and actress in a television series awards every single year, because the fans love them so much. And I count myself as one of them. So yeah, I adore her in this role.
Yeah, it was fun. I was going to mention, Gwen, I went back and I was starting to rewatch some of my original videos I did about the costumes, because it's a beautiful, just a beautiful world. And I don't even recall. I'm assuming they shot it in Scotland, but I don't even remember. Yeah, but but it's funny because I have in my drawer upstairs, I have like a square of the tartan, because I think when I originally did the video, I got I think one of the manufacturers or whatever sent me a swatch of the tartan or whatever. So when I was doing my and then I got oh my gosh, I'm not even wearing it. I'll wear it the next set we do. I got myself a beautiful shawl that's done, I think, in the Fraser tartan. That because through my connection with this show, I ended up meeting all these people. I met these people who do cosplay. I met these people who were the weavers. I met a woman who does a lot of the knit bits that, she recreates all the knits for the show. So that tartan fabric there was actually, it was milled in Scotland. But it was actually a guy out of Vancouver who was the designer of it. And he'd worked with Ron on, Battlestar Galactica, so they had that history together. He made a lot of the uniforms, so he did that. And actually, just recently he passed away, and I was really sad about that. His name was Gordon Kirkbright, and I actually talked to him on the phone. Like, I got him on the phone, and he was very nice. This is before we had Zoom. So in those days we were like on the phone, and I asked him all kinds of questions about like how do you wear a kilt? Like, how does that all work? And how do you go about weaving it and all, so I was just like super curious about all of that stuff. So even to this day, I went into this little Scottish shop in near where my husband grew up, and I went in there, and they still they're selling the Highlander tartan, so it's still very, very sought after. And of course, the reason why they had to do it was because they couldn't go with an actual tartan because they wanted to make sure that they had copyright on it and everything. So they created 5 tartans. So it was sort of fun going back and watching my own video. It was weird because I was just like, oh, I'd forgotten all that stuff. So that's kind of cool. So anyway, yeah, it's crazy though that it's like from 12 years ago, and it's kind of like The Simpsons. Like, you don't get too many shows that have like that many seasons and continue to go on. And but Gwen, a question I have for you: have they got, like, unlike Game of Thrones, have they gone past the books, or are they still on the books?
I think they're still on the books, and they're ending the series with the books. I don't know the exact details. We'll find out in a few weeks how they exactly end it. But my understanding is that as far as material that they're drawing on, this season is primarily from the last book published. I could be wrong. So somebody can correct me on that, because actually, like, shamefully, I have not read the books as much as a fan.
But that's what's great about the show, right? You don't have to have read the books. You don't have to have. You
I
don't have
have
to have.
I have the first 4 books in gorgeous collector's edition,
Oh, nice.
hardbacks. Here's the first one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they've been sitting on my shelf because once a few seasons passed, I was like, well, I'm immersed in the show. Maybe I'll just like go on that journey with the show, and then I can always do the books, after it wraps up. But so yeah, so like I think what may have happened was, and this is just pure speculation on my part, maybe they had started thinking about how they wanted to end the show back when they started it, because I think there's only been like 1 book published since then, or maybe 2. I'm not sure, but so they probably had ideas early on about how they wanted to end it, and I'm sure we'll find out after the fact when they give interviews talking about it, but yeah, I don't think they'll be doing too much in the way of invention, and maybe the show ends in a way that is both satisfying but open, and maybe they can go back to the story. That might be interesting. So
Yeah, because
we'll
now
find out.
I don't want to get ahead too much, but I was like, the actors, they've had to do aging on them, right? Although they are naturally aging too.
Yeah.
Because we were just showing
Well,
that picture of Sam Heughan, and I'm like,
not too many. We won't get into that.
yeah.
We'll save that for a future stream. But yeah, the characters do age throughout the story, but it's interesting that it is now 12 years since the beginning of the show. So like,
yeah. So when
some
you were
of that
showing that
aging
picture
has
of Sam
happened
Heughan,
naturally.
yeah, when you're showing the picture of Sam Heughan, I was like, oh my gosh, he looks so young then.
Yeah.
And same with
yeah, I
Caitriona.
started watching the season and I was like, oh, they're just little babies.
Yeah, because actually, so in the books, Jamie, I believe, is supposed to be 18. He's supposed to be quite young.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be an older woman. But I don't recall if they do that in the show. I think
I think he's
close.
supposed to be
There's
younger.
a hint of that, I think. 'Cause I recall a scene when they're talking about the proposal where she's basically like, are you sure that there isn't like someone, like a woman you would prefer who is basically closer to your own age? Now it's funny because I believe the actors Caitriona Balfe and Sam Heughan are basically the same age in real life, so they're obvious he's playing a little younger or maybe she's playing a little older. But I also think that it works in the sense that she has had more almost a different life experience than he has. Because one of the things I really love about Caitriona Balfe's performance in this is that she's playing she's playing what for her time would be considered a very modern woman,
Yes.
And like we still think of it as a period piece because the present of this series is still 1945. But for her, she is like essentially on the cutting edge of what, a woman could accomplish in that era. She's not only went to war as a nurse and is very proficient as a medic and a healer, but she has very strong, political opinions. And I want some of the best moments of what she gets to play in these first few episodes are kind of the moments when she has to kind of hold back on what she knows and what she can let on because she is obviously wary about giving too much away, but she almost can't help herself at times. And sometimes it's just a little amusing aside to the camera. Like I absolutely love the moment by the river with Ned Gowan where he's basically like, you have a real talent. You could have been an advocate. It's a pity they don't allow women to practice law. and she's like, well, not yet. And he's like, it'll be a few centuries before that happens. And then he walks away and she's like, only 2. That is such a great moment.
I will just say, and we're not going to talk about his character yet, but one of my favorite moments is like early on after they first meet her and like Jamie falls off the horse and she's treating him and she just starts like laying into him and laying into the others, and the profanity is coming loose, and then you hear Dougal just go, "I've never heard a woman use such language in my entire life."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was funny because I was thinking when she said Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ, when it was Roosevelt was the president. They were like, "Who's Roosevelt?"
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then we have, again, the great Sam Heughan, who, which it just cracks me up because I know you talked about your reaction when you saw the casting Heidi, but I don't know if you know this or not, but Outlander fans traditionally are quite extreme in their opinions, and I know there was this initial whole thing that no, Jamie's like a god. This Sam Heughan person is not even remotely.
Really? Oh, I thought he was so gorgeous. I was like I said, I thought he was better looking than even in in the book. I was like really excited, actually.
I mean, some of that, unfortunately, we just have to chalk it up to the passion of the fans, and that you can't compete with the what you have in your head, which is understandable. But I remember similar things about Game of Thrones when Nikolai Coster-Waldau was cast, and they're like, "Oh, he's not handsome enough to play Jaime Lannister," and it's like, well, no, that's an incorrect opinion.
It's funny because he had been in a show called Amsterdam. Did you guys ever see it, or New Amsterdam?
Yes, I did. Yes,
where it actually it's in the present and then the past. Like I think he can traverse or something. And I remember when I saw that show, I was like, "Who is this guy? Oh my god!" So when I saw him as Jamie, especially like he takes off his helmet, it was like he's like the prince, from Shrek or something.
It is very much that vibe. And on the other side, it was like Emilia Clarke is cast to play Daenerys, and it's like Daenerys is basically described as almost this goddess like beauty in the book, and the fact that some people are like, Emilia Clarke's not pretty enough to play Daenerys, and I'm like, hard disagree.
Yeah. I have to admit, I was a bit like that though about the Rhaegar actor. I was not super I wasn't like angry or anything, but I did make a comment about it in one of my videos, and someone said, "Hey, Heidi, that's kind of below you." And I said, okay, maybe, maybe the Rhaegar, but people were like his wig was terrible, and
I think they were trying to make him look more like Viserys. I wish his hair was a little longer. Now, I think he does a very good job and is a very small role. Now, the bigger problem is I've now seen the actor in Andor where he plays that kind of weaselly imperial captain. And
absolutely, I know. I saw him in another show too, but he's just not. Yeah, so I don't know. There was just, I think it was the same idea that Rhaegar was just like, just he was supposed to be beautiful and beyond, and beyond our wildest dreams. And I actually thought Jack Lloyd is the Viserys actor. Who's the actor?
Oh, Harry Lloyd.
Harry Lloyd. Sorry, I actually thought Harry Lloyd was amazing. Like. I thought he looked great with that wig. Whereas I think it's Finn. I don't know. It didn't work. So I know that a lot of the fans, and it was such a small little thing, a small little flashback. I don't even know if he spoke. So
no, and that's why it's like in a show that's was always, sort of ready to burst at the seams in terms of what they were trying to accomplish with the budget they had. It's like for this small little flashback, like, I don't know. I forgive them for not
for sure,
going all out on a new wig, but I don't know. Anyway, that's the Game of Thrones talk.
Yeah.
For
now,
another
question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask you. So, did the fans then come around to loving Sam Heughan?
Oh, they adore him.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's just that initial thing where, like,
because also aside from his hair color, my understanding is he doesn't have as much of a brogue like Scottish accent he put on. Like that was, and then also Caitriona is actually Irish. I believe, right? So she's putting on a British accent, and then Sam is putting on a heavier Scottish accent than he actually has, I believe.
No, I will say that, like, when I always joke that, like, I felt extra sympathy for Frank in the beginning of the show because everybody always talked up Jamie. Like, obviously, like, the fans coming into the show are obviously going to be Team Jamie all the way, as we all are, when push comes to shove. But like, it was just sort of, as an initial viewer, I was like, oh, well, poor Frank. He's like, he didn't ask for this. He's been left behind. And he loves Claire so much. So that was interesting from a viewer perspective. But then, of course, the show goes on, and as much love as I have for Frank, like, Sam Heughan as Jamie is just like so absolutely incredible. You're like, well, of course Claire fell in love with him. And I loved watching his performance early on in this show, because there's something so, like, he really does play a sort of young, naive, almost naive, young Scotsman. And again, try not to give anything away, but, like, this is a guy who goes through a lot over the course of the show. And so it's just interesting to see him, and both of them really play people who grow over the course of the show and mature, and but early on, just like seeing him be kind of I don't know, mischievous. It's not really the right word, but, like, there's just this youthful and energy that he brings to it, and it just makes for this really wonderful pairing between the two characters, of someone who's like, who doesn't have the experience of being in love and having that kind of a relationship, and kind of looking to Claire for, like, I love the scene in episode 8 when he says, "Is this usual, what's between us?" And she's like, "It's often something like this, but no, this is not usual." And it's so beautiful, and and of course he's, pardon my language, he's fucking brave as all hell, and has, like, he has some things that he says and does over the course of the show that are a sign that he is a man of the time he's in. But
Yeah, like spanking Claire, kind of like, I know there was some.
We're not there.
Oh, we're not there yet. Sorry.
We're not there.
Oops, I gave away something.
It doesn't matter. Trust me, I am not actually a spoiler phobic person by nature. I'm of the opinion that spoilers have never once ruined my opinion of a well-crafted story. So if something slips out and there's no context for it, like, I'm trying to stay spoiler free for this, like, little, series that we're doing, but, like, trust me, if something like that, I'm like, oh, at some point he makes a joke about spanking, I'm like, I'm sure I'll have forgotten that.
Okay, good.
I'm running the ship, and I say no spoilers.
No spoilers. Okay, I'll try to be a good girl.
But keeping that in mind, like, he's someone who, like, is, stands up for those he cares about, and will put himself in harm's way. And there's a scene this season where he comes to the defense of Leary, someone who he doesn't really know very well, just because he knows the shame that her being beat in the hall in front of everybody would bring upon her, and he takes that punishment on himself. And, like, he's the kind of person who doesn't even think twice about doing something like that. And it's just, his performance as Jamie is just such a great one. And and yeah, I just, he's very easy to admire and love the way that, you know, I think one of the great powers of really well done love stories is that, you know, is that you feel the love that, like, other characters feel for, you know, like I always felt like, you know, I fell in love with the movie Pride and Prejudice back in 2005 when I first saw it, and I remember one of the big things that took me aback was like being so immersed in the feelings that that Elizabeth had for Darcy, and likewise that Darcy had for Elizabeth, and feeling that almost as my own emotional like feeling, and it's similar here with Jamie and Claire, and so, you know, I think that, like, I fell, you know, pardon me, fell in love with Jamie because of how much Claire loves Jamie, and it's just so beautifully done, the man's just charming. So,
Oh
so
yeah,
there's that
absolutely.
too. And yeah, I just, so yeah, I said earlier, like, these two actors and these two characters have meant so much to me over the
Mhm.
course of all these years, and they're like old friends to me at this point, or even family, and so, like, I am never going to stop singing the praises of both Sam Heughan and Caitriona Balfe. They're just amazing performers, and I hope to hell that once their schedules free up a bit more after the show, that they each have extraordinarily successful careers, because they deserve it.
Yeah, by the way, there's a really fun movie that I watched with Sam Heughan. Was it oh, it's where it's like he plays like a James Bond character. Is it with Melissa
I think I know what you're
McCarthy?
talking about. I don't know the
It's
name of
so
it.
good. It's so good. And then Caitriona Balfe, she's been in a couple of, she was in I think Kenneth Branagh's movie
Yeah,
about
Belfast.
his Belfast,
Yeah.
yes. So they have, you know, done some, you know, acting roles, but yeah, they probably are so tied up in the show they don't have a lot of time
Yeah.
to do other projects, right?
No, I think that they will both be able to stretch their wings a little bit more after the show is over, and hopefully not get, you know, pigeonholed by their most famous roles, as unfortunately can sometimes happen, because it's clear that they both have a talent and range. And, you know, since you were talking about Sam Heughan, you know, one of the things that I really responded to in his performance is the way he presents himself with a very, I thought, a devil may care kind of attitude, this almost like kind of cheerful, carefree recklessness, you know, kind of, you know, the fact that, like, you know, he obviously, when we meet him, he's like seriously injured, and he's basically adopting the whole like "'tis but a scratch" Sassenach like thing, even though he's obviously, she's like, you're gonna bleed to death if you don't let me fix this. And then also his the way he is kind of navigating all around the kind of the difficult politics of the situation he finds himself in. Like, I think the scene I was probably most impressed with in his acting in the early stages is the scene when he because he had basically taken it upon himself to escort Claire back to the castle after her ill-fated escape attempt. He finds himself in the position where he's been trying to avoid, of having to pledge allegiance to his uncle while also not upsetting the delicate politics of the situation, and basically getting himself in, you know, earning the enmity of his uncle, or making himself like the something he doesn't want to be, which is essentially the choice for the next layer of the castle. And then you see the way where he like threads that situation with the way he pledges his loyalty without actually swearing a vow to Clan Mackenzie, and you're like, oh no, this guy is not like the classic, you know, just guy who's thinking with his heart over his head. This is a very smart man, and he is, you know, he knows he knows a lot about what he knows and what he doesn't know. And unfortunately, like, yes, there is a you know, some information that he is not privy to, because, as Heidi said, he is a man of his time. But it is also a testament to him that he recognizes what is special about Claire. And yes, it's one of the easy ways that you can kind of obviously differentiate him from the fact like, oh, this is the, our romantic lead of the series is obviously he is a little bit more enlightened than some of his clansmen about what about Claire's capabilities, which is a kind of an easy way for us to endear him to us as a modern audience, in addition to him just being conventionally good looking.
But there is that too.
There's that too.
Yeah. I just, it's almost like he's sort of a mediator between Claire and the rest of the clan, where he's sort of keeping the peace for her between them. And speaking of the rest of the clan, let's talk about another familiar face in the show, who was like one of the big reasons why I was so excited to watch this show back in 2014. The one, the only Graham McTavish, who, known to me through a lot of smaller character performances before he exploded onto the screen as Dwalin in the Hobbit trilogy, which I've always loved him in those films. And let me say, I know I've got a good.
Is it House of the Dragon?
Oh, House of the Dragon too.
But by the way, what happened to him, and where did he go? He kind of disappeared.
I don't know. We'll see. He went to he left. He left House of the Dragon and went on to another show, probably.
Okay, yeah. And him and Sam Heughan are good friends in real life, because I think they do.
Oh yeah, they do. Like, they've done some travel shows.
Yes.
Which was great.
Yeah,
because they're much more friendly towards each other in those than on the show.
Yeah, he's also. Do you guys watch Lucifer? He was also in Lucifer.
Yes, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. But this, honest to God, is my favorite performance of his. I think he's just so damn good as Dougal, as this character who is not a good guy, but yet he has his moments still, and just when you're like, this guy's a dick, then he'll do something heroic. And you're like,
you know what? But Gwen, isn't that one of the things that's great about this show, though? I mean, like, Randall obviously is absolutely. I don't know if there's any shade of gray there, but some of the characters, like, there's a lot of nuance to some, like Gillis. She's one of my favorite characters. I absolutely love the actress who plays her, and just we have a really wonderful assortment of ensemble cast, some of the Klansmen and so on. I just really love. So that's one of the things that I love about the show, is all of the very cool, interesting characters that we get introduced to.
And I do want to say, like, one of my favorite moments in the entire show, and especially for Dougal, is like, episode 6 is such a grueling, dark episode that is pretty much a bottle episode. It takes place predominantly in one location. And you're just dealing with the awfulness of Blackjack and the hopelessness of Claire's situation. And then, like a ray of sunlight, Dougal comes busting through the door with the Scottish bagpipes behind him and rescues Claire. And you're like, God damn it, I know this guy's an asshole, but like right now in this moment, I'm pumping my fist for him and like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love
I'm kind of like, it's funny because as much as, like, I have to tell you, when I watched the season 1, I won't get past episode 6, but when I first watched this season, like, I know, like, Dougal's kind of set up to be a bad guy. Obviously, Jack Randall is a terribly evil character, but Leary, for me, she like set me over the edge.
We're not there yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because we have sympathy for Larry in these early episodes, but I'm just
yeah, we're not there
Jared,
yet, but yeah, okay, maybe we're not there
prepared,
yet, but
be prepared for that to be short-lived.
okay,
Jared.
so maybe yeah.
I mean, like I got that sense. Like, I mean, the second I saw, obviously Larry is introduced to us in a very sympathetic context where, again, in the sign of the times, she is essentially being publicly shamed and threatened with, physical violence by her father for daring to be, a loose woman in these times. And so when Jamie steps up to take some of the take her punishment, and it's an incredibly brave thing that he does, and I'm like, of course she's gonna fall in love with him a little bit, but knowing that obviously this ends up being a love story between Claire and Jamie, I got the sense that like Larry's not going to be too happy when Jamie and Claire come back married, and I think we got enough early hints of that. I love the great. I do love the even though Claire at this point, she loves her husband, she's trying to get back to her husband. I do love that she acknowledges some hints of jealousy towards Larry, like the fact that when she sees her making out with Jamie in the corner, she gets a little jealous, and then she's like, "Oh, I was just jealous of what they had. I missed my husband." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're also jealous of her for other reasons." And then when Larry comes and asks her for the love potion, and Claire gets the dried horse dung and is like sprinkled this in front of his door, I'm like, you're being a little petty, Claire, but I like it.
And say, there's no place like love. There's no place like love. It's just so silly.
Well, and because we were talking about the age, the age gap, which isn't, we don't see it as much, but basically I believe that Leary probably would be more aligned with Jamie's age. Like she might be 16. And she's in love with, maybe she's in love with him, whereas I could see, I'm just imagining from Jamie's perspective, like meanwhile we have someone like Claire who's a slightly older woman. She's clearly had some world experience. That would be very intoxicating, I think, for Jamie, compared to Leary, who is kind of innocent. I think that the punishment she was supposed to get, I mean, I suppose it probably is historically accurate, but it is kind of ridiculous in a way. Like, but at that time, like a woman's virtue was her only, like, her only, what do you call it? Commodity.
Some of the I've listened. I remember years ago when the show was first starting, I listened to a couple podcasts about like that talked about the show, and like some of the quote unquote punishments that get doled out are a bit exaggerated, even for true history, but it serves the purpose for the show. And
it helps to drive the story. It helps to drive the story for sure. And also I think that the fact that, like you say, like, kind of like Dunk, like Jamie is a very heroic character, and which is again why maybe someone like Claire would be attracted to him, because he's dashing, obviously he's handsome, but the fact that he puts other people's needs ahead of his own, and as sets himself up to be definitely the hero, like the male hero in the story. And then maybe Claire would be the female hero, I suppose.
There's a great moment where, speaking of Leary, where Murtaugh, another great character, says to Claire, when it's like, if Colin or her father were to find out about this, Jamie would get a bit more, punishment or whatever. And then he's like, you mean like a young wife? And he says, maybe, but the young girl is not what Jamie needs, and Leary will always be a young girl even at 50, which, dear God, there could not have been a more perfect description of Leary. But like,
she kind of she has a bit of a Sansa energy about her. Like she has this romantic, like almost like not a realistic, perhaps, like I don't know, like I felt like she sort of fantasizes what something could be, as opposed to what it really realistically could be, whereas Claire is very grounded. She's very like
Yeah, and he says what Jamie needs is a woman.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's what Claire is, right?
yeah, exactly. And yeah, and yeah, speaking of like Murtaugh, like we haven't yet gotten into like a whole lot of his backstory, but he is one of my absolute favorite characters in this entire show because of his relationship with Jamie. And again, without giving anything away, he has ties with Jamie's parents that make him almost, make him really a father figure to Jamie. Basically like a stepfather, not stepfather, like a godfather. Um, and uh, and so I just love the way he's always looking out for Jamie, and like he's always in his corner, and like in a lot of ways, like his relationship with Jamie, and is and Heidi, since you've said you started watching the prequel series, it's like it's very evocative of the relationship he had with Jamie's father.
By the way, I thought that the casting they did on young Murtaugh was amazing.
Yeah.
In the show, Blood of My Blood. So that was fun, by the way, just kind of going back and comparing the younger versions to the older versions kind of thing. So that was very fun.
So I just think like he cares so much for Jamie, and with Jamie's parents gone, I think he sees it as his duty to look after him. And since Jamie has toxic relationships with his uncles, it's actually really good for him to have a father figure like that in his life. So yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of Murtaugh, Jared?
I mean, I really liked him. As you said, we haven't gotten a ton of him yet, but I get the sense that there's more to his story. And I also, like among the different, Scottish rebels that we meet, there are, he definitely stands out by being a bit more, serious in a certain respect. Like the characters of Rupert and Angus, for instance, are really played a lot for comedy, whereas Murtaugh seems a bit more grounded, and it shows that he treats Claire with a bit more respect, and obviously his bond with Jamie makes it clear he has sincere affection for him, beyond necessarily his like political potential within this family. Because the relationship that Jamie has with both of his uncles, but especially with Dougal, is very very charged, because there does seem to be like real familial love there, but it's also, particularly on the part of Dougal, I mentioned that like oath swearing scene where it kind of makes it clear that like, Dougal like loves Jamie and will like look out for him, but he will also use him. And if Jamie dares to try and cut the line in terms of succession, Dougal will kill him, basically. And that is kind of, Dougal strikes me as a very, I won't say Machiavellian character, because I think he has a bit more heart than that, but he is very much probably the most like Game of Thrones-y character in a certain respect in terms of his political machinations. Obviously, he has a cause that he very sincerely believes in. But for instance, I do believe like when he swears his oath of loyalty to his brother, like I don't get the sense that he's like out to actively murder him. Maybe that will prove false, but like I believe him when he says like, if I ever betray you, may this knife find my heart. And we see also, like, as you mentioned, there's the great moment when he comes and rescues Claire from his from the English officers, and the great moment of comedy where they can barely understand him, and then he says something very, very, very sharp, and he's like, no, I understood that one just fine. But also the the darker side of him, like, not just in terms of like the way he's using Jamie and like exploiting his scars to collect tribute money to raise army for this Jacobite rebellion, but also like the fact that he does kind of have a dark, let's say, attraction to Claire, even though he does not trust her and does not treat her very well. And like that moment, the moment when he, in the first episode, he makes the joke of like, I don't hold with rape and we haven't the time for it anyway. And then he basically tries to assault Claire when he's drunk. And in episode 4, like, it makes it clear that he has kind of a dark edge to him. And that is why, like, even though I love the actor Graham McTavish, like, I'm very clear on the fact that Dougal is not a character who can be trusted, unfortunately. So I'm always like wary of him, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy the performance. I think Graham McTavish is doing an amazing job.
Yeah, no, I think he's one of my favorite characters just because there's that contradiction in him. Like, he is someone who, as you say, can't be trusted, but he can also sort of be trusted to not be trusted.
Yes.
In a way, like he's, but
exactly. I think that's a very good point, Gwen.
Whereas I actually find his brother to potentially be the more dangerous, because you know what you're getting with Dougal. I think Colum puts on these airs of being like kindly and welcoming, but he's also plotting, and Claire trusts him more easily than she trusts Dougal, but then learns the price of that and then finds herself imprisoned. And I love Gary Lewis as Colum. I had only really seen him in Gangs of New York before this, but this was like a totally different kind of performance from him. And again, like, having seen the prequel series, it draws, like, brings it even more into the light that, like, Colum, he's gonna do what's in his interest. And he was more than okay with manipulating people to his purposes. And yet there is something honorable about him as well. And there's the way that people look up to him, and the fact that he cares very much for his clan, and he's a good leader. And so, like, again, what's so fun about these characters is that they're so complex. And I just love them, but so many of them I can't trust. Like, but it just makes them so fascinating to watch.
And Colum's, like, it just added to this, though. He's got this like crippling like disease, which we sort of see like in the prequel. We kind of get an idea of how that all came about, but just this, disfiguring chronic pain he must be in it all the time. Like, I try to imagine what would that be like, you have to be a leader, but then at the same time you're in constant pain. That would inform you. That would inform your character, I think. Because, like, even like looking at this picture here, he looks like he's always got a bit of a grimace, because I was talking about this a little bit when we were doing the Night of the Seven Kingdoms about who is Harry Ashton's character in that, the one who had the dragon dreams and the torment. Like, they wouldn't have had, he had to drink because they wouldn't have had the medication. So I don't even, because, like, if you have to remind me, but I don't think, like, Claire can't even really help him because his disfigurement is beyond, her help. She can't really, except for some massaging, I think, if you can remind me what happens there.
Yeah. She actually massages his spine rather than
his spine. So she knows a little bit about that. So but can you imagine, like, being in chronic pain? I can't. Like, I've got a little bit of arthritis, and even that is annoying. And I notice on days when I have a little bit of a flare up, I'm a little bit cranky, right? So.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about the fact that, like, I've been having back pain recently, and, like, that's miserable enough getting up and, like, is this going to be a slightly easier day, or is it going to be kind of rough? And so, like, and that's absolutely nothing compared to what somebody like Colum has to go through, and he's got so much responsibility on his plate. So And I just think that Gary Lewis does such a great job of
Yeah, I
portraying.
wasn't familiar with any, so I hadn't seen Gangs of New York. So other than that, what else has he been in?
I honestly don't know. I know he's a character actor who's done lots of work, but like nothing that sort of stood out to me as something I noticed. I just remembered him in Gangs of New York because he's he's basically like a henchman to Bill the Butcher in that movie, and so like it's just a completely different kind of performance, where in this he's got this sort of regal presence.
Absolutely,
and I was like,
yes.
oh wow, that's very different. So yeah, no, I again, you can't really trust him, but I really loved the character and the performance. I thought he was great. And like, I'm just gonna say, like, because everybody in our group at Here Be Dragons always talked about being team beard, and I think Colum is much more impressive with the beard. So
yeah,
I understand he wanted to look presentable for the gathering, but like, I'm like, no, grow out the beard, dude.
Now, looking at him here, you know what? I think he might have been in Billy Elliot. I think he's the dad in Billy Elliot, now that I think about it. Do you guys remember that movie?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, he is in Billy Elliot, yes.
Yeah, he's the dad. He's like, boys don't do, boys do football. Boys don't do ballet. That's a terrible impression. Yeah, no, he's a fabulous actor. His beard is great. And here's an example. Like, I have to say, because I haven't looked at this for a while, but the wigs in this show are really good. Like, I think everything, well, the costumes are amazing, obviously, but compared to, I know there's been some complaints about the wigs in House of the Dragon, but very nice wigs.
Everybody who's going to complain about the Game of Thrones wigs needs to watch the movie Gettysburg and look at the beards in that. And then tell me you have a problem with the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. But like, for instance, so we've got we have Frank, and then they put a wig on him, and but obviously Tobias does such a great job transforming, but his costume and everything really helps sort of sell that too. Cause like in the 1940s, he's, wearing the dashing suits and he's got the fedoras and everything. And the shorter hair. And then when they transform him over to there he is. I mean, he's very dashing, right? Very handsome. Yeah. I know it's a different kind of handsome but it's kind of like, I feel he's old Hollywood kind of handsm.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Like that dashing, like Clark Gable, that sort of dashing Hollywood look. And he looks amazing in a suit. And so, but when you have him as Jack Randall and they transform him, he's got the long hair with a queue and the red coat and everything. It's quite the different look. And he does such a good job, I think, transforming into that other character.
No, I like, it's just so amazing because I don't obviously I recognize that they're both Tobias Menzies, but like something in my brain just switches when
I forget. I absolutely forget.
It just feels like they're two completely different people.
Oh, it's amazing. It's almost like, and I don't know if when they did the show, because obviously it's in the book. It is in the book that they do look the same. So that's a Diana Gabaldon thing. But I was wondering when they did decide to cast it, how they were approaching it. Should we get twins or should we get the same actor? I'm assuming that must have been a discussion that they had. But you totally buy it that it's a different person. So, Jared, did you find that?
No, I think that carries himself very differently as the two characters. When he's Frank, I definitely get a sense of that old kind of Hollywood, like Jimmy Stewart, Humphrey Bogart,
exactly. Cary Grant is the other one.
Cary Grant, yeah, and whereas with Jack Randall, there is a much more like you get the sense that this is really like a beast in human skin, and I think that that comes down to physical choices. And I think that's why it's smart that they did have the same actor play the role, especially because, they don't need to share scenes together. So there's not like the body double aspect of it to contend with. And yeah, I just think that all of the casting in this show has that kind of same quality. The House of the Dragon wig thing, I would just say that it's a little harder to pull off the silver blonde wigs than it is to pull off the 18th century Scotland wigs. So there's degrees of difficulty. But I do think that in particular, for the character of Colm, that they talk about how Claire identifies his condition, Toulouse-Lautrec syndrome, which is an autosomal recessive genetic disease. So yes, it is beyond her ability to help or cure him. And she knows that he's not going to live a long life and he's going to have a lot of pain. And so that is the kind of thing that would engender, sympathy from both her and from us as a modern audience, because we're kind of coded to, have that sympathy for characters who have disabilities, while also recognizing that they can be very capable. And Colm is, he would not have risen to his position as Laird and hold the respect he clearly does if he were not, a man capable of holding these, all of these men together. You get the sense that you do not get the sense that he is a weak lord who everyone is just seeing as a pushover. He carries himself very strongly, but that means that he has to do things that are perhaps, unfortunately considered by our standards, again, morally questionable. He is the big obstacle for Claire in the first few episodes, because he's the one who's saying that, no, you cannot leave. And when she's trying to endear her and earn his trust, and you think she's going to maybe do it by doing the massages and stuff, and then she only makes herself more invaluable, because he's basically well, if you're this incredible resource for our clan, why would I let you go? Mm-hmm. And so it's unfortunately a kind of thing where we just, again, the conventions of the times, we're in Claire's perspective for the most part. It does make sense if you flip the perspective around from these Scottish lords, that this random English woman shows up in their midst and they don't know her and her history. And they're like, who are you? Why are you here? You are English. The English are our adversaries. It is natural that they would suspect she might be a spy. So it is so everyone is kind of following their own interests, even though we all know that, ultimately Claire does not have malicious intentions towards them. But it does mean that Colm ultimately comes across as a character who, you do not want to cross, because he is a character who could very much make life very difficult for our two central protagonists in particular, both Claire and Jamie. And yeah, I think that makes for a very interesting kind of collection of twisted, loyalties in this, even in just this one clan. And yeah, the fact that Jamie stands out. So there are two characters who stand out as a very trustworthy, because a lot of the characters do not. You mentioned you love Gayless, Heidi. I do too. I thought that she was great, but I was also I do not trust you. There is something else going on with you than I do. I get you're Claire's friend and you're showing her kindness, but you're hiding something. Mm-hmm. But the two characters who do stand out as pillars of trustworthiness in this area are one, Jamie, of course, and the other, Mrs. Fitz. God, that woman is such a sweetheart.
I would add to that, Ned. I think Ned is a very honorable character as well, that Claire has encountered. But Mrs. Fitz for sure, and she's a constant. And she kind of has a very motherly sort of. She's lovely. And again, some of these characters are in the prequel as well, so it's really fun.
Also, as nice and trustworthy as she is, Claire knows that she can't, doesn't dare confide in any.
Oh, absolutely not.
Her truth, because she thinks about telling Mrs. Fitz and plays it through in her mind, and does not like the scene that she imagines. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, it's it's funny because and my husband, we were talking about this one time that, let's say, for instance, something that we would think of just being a normal thing, like a cell phone, for instance. But if you were to have a cell phone like 200 years ago, that would be considered like, black magic or whatever, like, so at one point, something is considered just technology or whatever, but back then would be considered probably something demonic or so it's like she knows that there's this danger of like coming clean, of course, because that's what I was thinking when she arrived. Like when she first met Randall, she could have said, well, I actually have traveled through these stones or whatever. I don't even know what would have happened. So she has to keep this secret, and I think that's part of what's very fascinating about the first season is the fact that she has this secret that she can't tell anybody because she doesn't know if she does, there's a good chance things are not going to end well for her.
Well, especially if she's in near proximity to Father Bane.
Oh God, yes. Yeah,
You-
absolutely. Well, yeah, because we have some real fanatics, right? As well. That's the other thing.
Yeah, because we've only gotten a glimpse of Father Bane. Needless to say, Jared, that goes some places in the second half.
Well, I have to say there are some things that Claire does, like kind of like, I don't know, kind of like in Star Trek, where what is it called that where you're not supposed to interfere?
Oh, the Prime Directive.
The Prime Directive. And Claire, sometimes she is just like, what are you doing? Like, it would be better for her just to step back and just go, okay, I should probably not interfere here because things might, they might go, what is going like what is going on here? But she just can't help herself, right?
If she had been from the 90s and had seen Next Generation, she would know all about the Prime Directive, but she doesn't. So yeah.
It's too early.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that, the whole thing with like the Arthur C. Clarke quote of like any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and like, and the whole like one of the reasons that Claire is so proficient is because like she has the benefit of an additional 200 years of scientific knowledge, even if she doesn't have all the resources, she has enough to actually do things that could help. Yeah, I do love the moment.
They would have had penicillin by this time, right? So
yeah. And I was just going to say,
and that actually comes into play later. I don't think that's a big reveal to say that actually comes into play later on in the series. The idea of having penicillin on hand. In those old times, but
because that kind of like, I was just reading about this thing called the bootstrap paradox. Have you ever heard of that? A bootstrap, I think it's called bootstrap.
Sorry, whenever I hear that, I just think of Pirates of the Caribbean. And
okay, well, the idea is it's in time travel. Well, Jared, you go ahead. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it's a theoretical time travel construct where basically an object or a piece of information is sent back in time, becoming the cause of its own existence in the past. And so it's like, how did this actually ever get invented? Because if it came from the future originally, then it's who actually created the thing. There's a little bit of that where I think Claire is trying not to upset the apple cart, but also like we mentioned, like the reason she gets on Father Bane's bad side in the first place is because like a young boy is dying because he ate something poisonous, this lilies of the valley, and she recognizes the medical signs of the dilated pupils and the slowed heart rate, and she knows that he is not demonically possessed. So even if she's going to piss off Father Bane, like it is her her oath as a member of the medical establishment to not let this person die if she can help them, and so she does the right thing, clearly. But the obvious thing is that, like, yes, someone you do not want to piss off in 18th century Scotland is the local Catholic priest, because they hold a lot of sway. The fact that the priest is played by Tim McInerney, another Game of Thrones alum.
Yes, no, yeah. Who was he in Game of Thrones?
He was Lord Robert Glover, he's a character I have complicated feelings about because in season 6, he initially refuses to answer Jon and Sansa's call, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense, but boo you. And then he has the incredible moment where he swears his fealty to Jon in the King in the North sequence, and I'm like, all right, Glover, hell yes. And then he immediately starts, questioning him again in season 7. I'm like, Glover, you're getting on my bad side. And then in season 8, he doesn't even freaking show up to Winterfell, and I'm just like, all right, dude, you're on my shit list now.
Yeah, were the Glovers, what was their sigil? It was the chain?
It was the fist. It was the
fist. That's right. The Glovers. Yes, that's right. He had a small scene.
Like part of that is like down to casting, and maybe the actor wasn't available for season 8, and so I'm like, maybe he would have been faithful if he had been available.
Well, they did a couple of recasts, though. Remember, actually in Game of Thrones, they had a couple of recasts.
Don't get me started on the Game of Thrones recap. I find it to be like, I get it, but it's also one of the most maddening things in the world.
I mean, yeah, so it's kind of like, obviously, again, like Claire has, again, if she's a nurse, she has this, imperative. I have to do this thing, but it could bring attention to her and cause her harm. And so sometimes I don't think she necessarily weighs it. She just sort of jumps in. And so I was at many times, especially in season 1, worried for her. I was like, oh dear, I'm very concerned about you. I think if I were, and I'm a chatty Cathy, I think if I had been thrust back 200 years, I think I would find myself being quite quiet. I don't think I would be mouthing off, using vulgar terms and running around in my nightie. I think I would.
It's like those memes online, the Star Wars memes, where the character just like makes the most responsible decision, and then it cuts to the end credits. It's like that's the thing. It's like Claire saying, "I'm actually just going to stay indoors the entire time," and then the show's over.
And then the show's over, and then that's it. But we have to have some conflict, so she has to do some things. She has to do the Claire things, because it was funny. I remember when the show was out in the first earlier seasons, and they would be like, "Okay, these things are kind of happening partly because of Claire's doing." You're like, you're doing this, but she has like a 1943 sort of mentality, sort of a modern woman. And so then when she's back in that time period, she's just like, her brain can't alter completely to think about how things are for a woman in that time period. So, and of course, they're very devoutly religious. That's the other thing. You've got that going on. So, and women are property. They're not emancipated. They don't really have any rights. So, when you are you're under the laird of the clan, you basically are you're kind of property belonging to the laird in a way, I guess. And so therefore you're kind of, she might think of herself being a prisoner, but they probably don't think of it being that way. They probably think that they're looking after her or something.
I just say it's so funny because in the we think of it well, she's from the 40s. It wasn't exactly the most progressive time, but from the the vantage point of being from the 40s and then coming back to the 1740s, that's just such a shell shock. I won't go into details, but later on in the show there is a moment where somebody sees a picture of a girl in a bathing suit from the future, and is absolutely scandalized by the sight of it.
Well, it's interesting.
Oh, you poor soul! You have no idea what's going on.
It's interesting too, because I do. I haven't read why Diana decided to set it, because she could have had it it was someone in our time period, or whenever the books were written, on which I believe was 2000 or something, or late 90s. So it's interesting that she did decide to set it back in the 40s. And I don't know if she wanted it to be because she wanted to be kind of evenly 200 years. It's kind of like, as opposed to 250. I'm not sure. But so the women did have the vote back then. Women could be educated, women could own property, but not so modern as our society where, there still was some sexism perhaps back then. So it's interesting that they made that decision to do that time period.
I don't know why, but I think it's a great choice because it is this clash of cultures, but not just between Claire and, and the Highlanders, but also between us and Claire.
Mm-hmm.
There is and so I think it actually works really good. I do want to say, like, because I'm conscious of the fact that Jared and I might go for a super long time, since you won't necessarily be here the whole time if we ramble on and on. I did want to like zero in for a little bit and talk about the episode The Wedding, which is like pretty much one of my favorite episodes of television ever, and and of this show, it might still be my favorite episode ever. Which is, it's basically an hour of two characters falling deeply in love with each other, and this is the episode where I want to shout out the composer Bear McCreary, because dear God, what an amazing job he did with the whole show, but especially this episode where we really get the love theme for Claire and Jamie on full display. And
one thing I was can I mention actually,
yeah,
Gwen, the opening sequence, the opening title song. I have to tell you, I used to sing that when I was in choir. It's a slightly different thing. So as soon as I watched the opening sequence, I was like, oh my gosh, this song. Because sorry, what is the name of the song again?
The Skyboat song.
The Skyboat song, yes. So that was really, because actually, I don't know if you both have seen Sinners. There's a song in Sinners as well. Yeah. That what's the name of the song in Sinners? That's sort of an old Celtic song as well, or Irish song, I believe. That again, I was like, my sister used to sing that song.
Rocky Road to Dublin, is it the one that, or also the one that the vampires sing before?
The vampires sing when they're trying to, I think, lure.
The Go Lassie Go song.
Go Lassie Go, yeah. So my sister used to sing that when she was in university. So it's funny. So when I, that was one thing that when I heard that song, the Skyboat song, it's a slightly different version. I'm sure there's different arrangements for it, but it kind of immediately kind of hit me because I'd had this sort of experience with that song, and the same with the song from Sinners. So it's funny how powerful music is. And then of course they have this sort of, the druid sort of thing, which is everyone's always extremely fascinated with that whole thing with Stonehenge and the druids. And so just, the stones and just all this lore that Diana Gabaldon in her original story has created. So that's another thing I think why I find the show, I found it so powerful, was just, you've got the lore and you've got, these Celtic, Scottish sort of traditions. And, I don't know if we've gotten into the fairies yet, if we've talked about that at all. Gwen, that might be, is that after? Did we touch on the fairies at all? Just the sort of the lore that the Scots have, like, so they have their religion, but they also have their folklore as well, like leaving milk out, like things like that, which I've always found really, really fascinating. And so that's the other thing. Like, so we've got the magic and we've got but then we have this love story, and there's just so many wonderful elements to this show, I think.
Yeah, it's, I do want to comment on the opening title sequence and the Skyboat song. It's interesting because that song is about Bonnie Prince Charlie, and the original version is Sing Me a Song of a Lad That Is Gone, but they change it to Last for the show, which is great because it fits so wonderfully. And the original version of the opening titles that is in the first few seasons, although it gets modified, as each season goes along. But for the first few seasons, it was actually sung by Rhea Yarbrough, who is Bear McCreary's wife.
Oh, no way. I didn't know
who
that.
actually sung on the Battlestar Galactica soundtrack as well. And what's interesting is in the later seasons, the show was so established that they started attracting bigger names to come on and do renditions of the opening title as a way to change things up. I think for this final season, they've actually got Annie Lennox doing it.
Amazing.
But I have to say, like, I have such affection for the early years renditions of the song, just because I have so much connection to her voice through the work she did on Battlestar, and because of the connection she has, being married to Bear, and just because I think her voice is so beautiful, and so there's something incredibly nostalgic for me about going back to these early days of the show when they didn't yet have the heavy hitters,
And I'm looking at. Sorry, I was looking at Bear. He also did. He did Foundation, which is one of my favorite shows, and also Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So he's. But I didn't know that he'd worked on Battlestar Galactica. So I guess he must have had a relationship with Ron Moore from that. Because and Caprica he did as well.
What was really funny is that apparently for like almost nearly every project he did in those early days, he kept trying to introduce bagpipes because he loves bagpipes so much, and everybody he worked for was like, Bear, what's with the bagpipes? And
well, his name's McCreary. I'm assuming he has a Scottish background.
And so when he did Battlestar, he used them for the Adama family theme, and Ronald D. Moore really liked it, and so he was so excited. He's like, I finally get to use bagpipes in this music.
Hilarious.
And so he said that when Ronald D. Moore brought him on for Outlander, he was like, oh my God, this is paradise. I get an entire show full of bagpipes.
Oh yeah, the score is absolutely beautiful in this.
Yeah. That is one of I know it's a selling point. I will also just shout out for Bear McCreary compositions. He also did the music for Black Sails and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., both of which are very good scores. But yes, Gwen, you were, I love the opening title theme. When you mentioned that the opening credits kind of changed, a part of me was like, oh, I hope they don't change the opening title themes. I really love it.
The theme stays, but they bring in different singers over the years. But mostly for the first couple seasons, it's the same singer, but there's just, depending on how the story changes, there's different elements to the theme. Which is pretty cool.
Which makes sense, but yeah, since you were talking about the wedding sequence, I think that probably the best piece of music from this opening stretch of 8 episodes is the title track called "The Wedding." It is gorgeous and very sweepingly romantic for an episode that again is basically a bottle episode. It mostly takes place in a bedroom and an inn, but it feels so, and there's the conflict, such as it is essentially these two people who are having to get married for essentially safety and political reasons, even though they do have a strong attraction to each other, actually learning more about each other and falling deeper in love. So it is rather sensuous and beautiful to watch. And obviously it's filmed in a very gorgeous way. I think the director of that episode is,
it's Anna Forster.
Anna Forster. I thought,
which is nice, actually. I was going to say, because it had been directed by all men leading up to that episode, and I love that it was a woman who directed that episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I mean,
I have to say, I don't think a man could have directed this episode in the way that it was done. It's just, it's very clear that, you know,
It feels
there's,
very well. I mean, it's interesting because obviously Diana Gabaldon, the original writer, is a woman,
yeah,
and I remember in the book it being like very romantic and very much from a woman's point of view. And I think that this show is kind of from Claire's, for the most part, she's doing the narration and so on. So it is from her point of view. So having a woman directing it, and also just it's kind of nice because, at that time, even like going back to 2012 or whatever, 2014, sorry, we weren't seeing a lot of female directors. So as a woman, I kind of appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. This show like challenges a lot of sort of stereotypes, both in the story, but also like behind the camera, which was a lot more revolutionary back 12 years ago than, and it still feels revolutionary today, but especially 12 years ago. And but talking about the director, I do also want to shout out a couple other names, and especially because like later on in the show, this I'm actually trying to let me pull some information up, because later in the show the stewardship of the series gets handed over to I think primarily Matthew B. Roberts becomes like the chief showrunner of the series from like seasons 3 through 8. Ronald Moore was much more hands-on in these early seasons, but the man had a lot on his plate over the years, so like it's understandable that he wasn't running the ship for the entire show. But even Matthew Robert, if you look at like the opening credits, you can see names like Matthew Roberts, Tony Drafia, you know, uh, in executive producer roles. So like they were definitely a part of this show from its inception. But another name that's on there, and he actually wrote episode 6, which is the Garrison Commander, which is the bottle episode with Blackjack. And it was actually written by Ira Stephen Bear, who Star Trek and Battlestar fans will recognize that name. He's one of the big voices behind both Battlestar and Deep Space Nine, and an extraordinary writer. So like it's no wonder that episode 6 is just like, pardon my language again, but fucking amazing from a writing perspective. So like the show has like great behind the scenes talent working on it throughout its run, but especially in these early seasons, they had some real heavy hitters early on who were part of that sort of
I was going to add also
that club that Ronald D. Moore had sort of formed around him.
So I was going to add regarding the costumes that actually it's Ron's wife who was the costume designer.
Yes.
Well, actually, the original costume designer was the original costume designer from Battlestar Galactica, and then she did I think she set up the first 4, and then Ron's wife was Terry Dresbach is her name. She did the costumes moving forward after that. So this episode, this dress, the amount of work that went into this dress is absolutely crazy. I did a lot of research on it, and because all her underpinnings and everything, but they actually took like mica, which is like this kind of like semi-precious stone, and they like sliced like very, very, very thin layers of it, and then they placed it all over her dress so that it had, because it's considered like a candlelight wedding, which is a thing apparently. And so you're only having the light from the candles. And I think they wanted to recreate that sort of experience. So by having these little mica slice slivers on her dress, it just gives it that glimmer. And then just when I was rewatching my video, Jamie has, I mean, they give him a beautiful costume in that, but then they add like little, like along the cuff, little bit of silver threads, like just beautiful embroidery and everything in there. And then of course, Claire has silver embroidery. So it's, and the fabric of her gown also had a bit of a luster. So this special candlelit. And I love the fact that, they have in the book, okay, I have to tell you, in the book, the dress is not that great. Like it's not that spectacular. So, they came up with something pretty special here, and then there's a lot of humor about how they get the dress and everything too.
Yeah.
Right?
Scene where Ned to go to the brothel and negotiate with the madam and the sex workers to get the dress is one of the funniest scenes.
It's so funny. I love it. Send out the boys to do it, right?
And then
and the ring.
No, I told it to you exactly as Ned told it to me.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
God. That's so great.
But can you remind me, what's the ring made out of? Is it a nail or something?
Key. It's a key.
A key, that's right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Which we won't get into a key to what, because that's actually yet to be revealed. But yeah, I think what's so brilliant about this episode, and from what I understand, this actually threw some fans for a loop when they saw the episode, because the episode opens with a flashback, and we get Frank saying, "Let's get married right now," and then it cuts from their kiss to Jamie and Claire's kiss at the wedding, and then it appears that we're done with the wedding and we're going right into the post-wedding. And I think fans were kind of like, "What just happened? You skipped the wedding." Little did they know that actually, no, it's the way the episode was constructed that's like it's brilliant, as we get that sort of initial awkwardness between them, and then we get to fill in the story of the wedding and how it came about throughout the episode, and so so we're getting that story, and we're also getting the story of them really falling in love with each other, and the sort of stages of their love making. And at our first it's awkward, and it's still enjoyable, but not necessarily fireworks yet. And then as the story of the wedding unfolds more and more, and their intimacy grows closer, and then we get the wonderful sweeping romantic and the love scenes that we expect from a show like this. And I just the only word to describe me watching this episode was swooning. I was just completely losing it. And but this is the episode that when I'm watching, I always am hoping that my dad's not going to walk in while I'm.
But you said that you watched it with your mom, though.
Yeah, I did.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah, well, that had been like a sort of, we had watched so much together over the years that by the time we got to Outlander, it was just one of those things that we were kind of used to.
Yeah, actually, Gwen, actually, this reminded me of something. So my mom, before she passed away, she would come over and hang out at my, I'd get her to come stay with me for a few days, and I'd be like, "Hey mom, want to watch Outlander?" She'd be like, "Yeah." So I would put out on Outlander and we'd watch it together. And actually our favorite show that we would watch together was Upstairs, Downstairs. I don't know if either of you know that show.
I know of it, but again, I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's sort of like Downton Abbey, and my sister has a box set of it, so we had to watch it on VHS. It's sort of funny. But we would watch that, and then, but I'd be like, Mom's coming over, and wouldn't even matter where we would pick it up. I'd be like, Mom, let's watch Outlander, and then I could put on season 2. It wouldn't even matter, and then we would just watch, as many episodes as she was up to, kind of thing. But she just always loved it, so yeah, it sort of reminded me when you were telling me that.
What was great about by the time I was watching the show was, I remember when Pride and Prejudice came out on DVD, I had to always say, well, Mom really wants to watch this, so that I had the cover, with my dad. But then that became like less of a secret that I loved the movie, and I loved the, like romantic costume dramas and, all that. So that by the time Outlander came along, Mom and I would just watch it out in the living room, and like
your dad wouldn't question it anymore.
Dad would periodically like come out, and like we just didn't discuss it.
It's really, I was going to tell you, this is really weird. So I'm watching, I think I mentioned I'm watching this new show called Young Sherlock, and Colin Firth is in it. And it's so weird because, he's like a senior citizen now. And you and I, Gwen, have had conversations about Pride and Prejudice and how I love the one with, and there's been many adaptations. So I think every generation has their favorite. So I happen to love the Jennifer Eel, Colin Firth version of it. By the way, speaking of that, do you know that Jennifer Eel, who played Elizabeth in that version, was in the pilot for Game of Thrones? I think she was Catelyn Stark.
We do know it, which was always.
And people keep asking for them to release the episode.
Yeah,
I want to because I've always wanted to see the original pilot, but now I want to see it for a completely different reason, which is I'm curious to see which is it. Is it that initially they were being polite about how bad it was, and as time went on they were getting more honest about how bad it was, or is it just really not that bad, and the tale grew in the telling of how bad it was?
Well, I saw something recently, when's the anniversary? There's an anniversary coming up, and
it's the 15th anniversary of the original premiere of Game of Thrones this month. Actually, they're doing.
So people are saying, why don't you release the pilot for the 15th anniversary? And my personal opinion is, if they did, wouldn't it be amazing if they had it at a movie theater that we could go watch it at? I honestly don't think it could be that bad.
I would. I mean, knowing how fans react to Game of Thrones stuff, I have no doubt there would be lots of people going on about how terrible it is. But I think I would enjoy it, and
me too.
And I would love to just see the differences and to see those actors in the roles. I think it'd be a very interesting what if. Yeah, who is in Pride and Prejudice? So I remember being very
There's
excited.
So many connections.
When she was announced. Yeah. So and
Jennifer Eel, actually, I saw her recently in what's this show? I can't really.
I was so excited when they announced Jennifer Eel as Catelyn, because in all fairness, she has more of the temperament that I sort of associate with the character of Catelyn. But I grew to love Michelle Fairley, and she was absolutely incredible. But it was a slightly different interpretation of the character than what I had imagined in my head. And so I don't know. I just think it would be really fun as a what if to see, what could have been.
I just think it'd be such a blast to watch it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's holding it back.
I'm sure there's legal reasons for it, because it is an unfinished, pilot technically that HBO owns. But I mean, maybe for the 20th anniversary of a box set or something, we could get it as an extra. I think that would probably be better than having a big theatrical screening of it. I don't know if that's the.
You can rent a theater. If you want to show something, you can rent a theater to show something, apparently, if you have it.
I just think that would be knowing the fan base, that sounds like it would just be inviting trouble. So I'd rather it be a quiet affair.
Yeah. How about this? They can release the original pilot in theaters when George R.R. Martin finishes the book series.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Oh,
yeah. That's I don't know if either of you have seen Project Hail Mary, but apparently there's a 4-hour cut of that movie or something. Oh, and I'm I would totally watch that. I would totally be down for that.
I don't want to go off on a tangent about this, but
No, I won't.
but like every movie has a 4-hour cut. Like they always like post like clickbait articles about that, and it's like every movie ever made has a rough cut that runs for like a couple hours more. So I don't know. I always roll my eyes a little bit when I see those news articles.
Well, I watched the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, and I have to tell you, I loved it.
Yeah,
it was so fun.
That is one of my favorite superhero movies, that cut, and I'm very glad that it is the 4 hours that it is, because that's what makes it special. You know, the the original theatrical cut famously being not that
I'm
good.
calling conversation about Zack Snyder's Justice League too far off the path of our.
Okay, that's fine. Respect.
Let's get back to Outlander. I think we were talking about the wedding episode still, and the directors and the directorial choices and the music. I have to say, I do love the fact that in this episode, like, we get the sense that even though Jamie and Claire have been kind of having this attraction to each other for pretty much the entire run of the show, like when they're actually starting to actually be physically intimate for one another for the first time, it's not just the sweeping romantic like thing immediately. It is a little bit more awkward. But then it becomes much more sensual as it goes on, and there's humor to it too. Like, the fact that Jamie is very conscious of trying to make Claire feel comfortable, never having done this before. I do love the comedic beat when they kiss, and Claire is very into it. She's like, "Where'd you learn to kiss like that?" He said, "I said I was a virgin, not a monk."
Yes. But also, I think the fact that I don't know what order they did this in the series, in like the shooting schedule, but the fact that the two actors didn't really know each other that well either, like compared to where we are now, right? And I think they had a pretty good, they got on well, but I think they both had their own maybe romantic partners and stuff. So that would have been just, in itself had some awkwardness. I'd imagine. I'm not an actor, so I don't know what it's like, but it's probably a little bit uncomfortable, and you got a crew around you and everything. So I think they did a very good job of capturing that.
That's another thing. Like, the fan base did get a bit out of control after a while, because there was all this stuff going around. Like, the fan base was convinced that that Caitriona Balfe and Sam Heughan must be in love with each other in real life, and that there's stuff going on, and like they're both happily with other spouses, and so yeah, they've kind of had to deal with that for years. I think there was even it's so funny, like this thing it was so out of control on social media, and I think like William Shatner called out the Outlander fan base for being
that's hilarious. Well, he did that famous, I think it was an SNL skit or something, where he told all the Star Trek fans to get a life or something.
Yeah. So like it just cracked me up seeing that, because I'm like, wow, this is really taking on a life of its own.
So the fans were shipping the two leads, like hoping that they would be in real life. Yeah. By the way, I don't believe any of that anymore. After I actually fell for the fact that I thought Pamela Anderson had ended up with
Liam
Neeson. I believe that, and now I don't believe anything anymore, because I honestly believed it, because his wife had passed away. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy for Liam. Like, he's found somebody, and they seemed to be a nice match. And then I was pissed when I learned that they were actually together. It was all like just a junket relationship, or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
But needless to say, the on-screen passion was, they did a great job of conveying that, and
yeah, because I saw some of their early testing. Did you watch any of their screen tests? Like they
once upon a time I've seen it, but again, like it, like this is, I actually do have the box set with me. Here's my Blu-ray box set of the complete first season, and I remember picking this up at Target in 2015. I was out with my mom taking her to a doctor's appointment, and we stopped at Target. And I picked that up. The point being, that was a long while back, and so I'm sure that I watched all the bonus features on that back when I first got it, but it's been a while.
But I do remember seeing some of the testing, and those two, like their chemistry was, amazing.
Yeah. And it's just like, watching this episode, I was just like, especially in that first viewing, there were just so many times where I caught myself like holding in my breath because I was just so caught up in like, just like when they're undressing each other, and and it's like, she's like, my turn now, and like they're just taking their time, and it's just so sensual and like so romantic, and like just like, my heart was pounding out of my chest watching it, and so like it's just
it was kind of, it was opposite the Grey Worm Missandei one, like, which I thought was the most unsexy coupling I'd ever seen. I was like, what? I think Dan or Dave directed that one. I was like, that is like not how it works.
No. I like see but I do take your point that this is a little bit more sensual, and again, I do think it comes down to the perspective of the female director, like shooting it much more from Claire's perspective, because she is the one, even though it's a little awkward for Jamie too, because he's never been with a woman before in this way. Claire is the one who we really need to be in her headspace, not only because she's in this dangerous situation surrounded by strange people. If she doesn't do this, she gets handed over to Blackjack Randall for God knows what. But she is also wrestling with the tremendous guilt of the fact that she is getting married when she is already married, even if her husband has not been born yet in this timeline. But like, he's very much alive in 1945. And, the fact that she's doing this ostensibly to get back to him, but at the same time, now developing this very deep and real connection with Jamie, it really helps to, feel her confusion in this moment, and the fact that like because she is enjoying this, she does seem to really, have this connection with Jamie that's paying off. And, the love is really starting to grow. But, it must be noted that like one episode after this, incredibly passionate, romantic scene, she is, she runs to the stones at Craignadoon to try to get back to Frank. So it's like very much, and I'm sure that will be addressed in the latter half of season 2. The fact that, Jamie does not know that he knows she was married and that her husband is not alive. But the fact that she has not confided to anyone that like she still is trying to get home to her husband in her own time is a fascinating layer of conflict, inner conflict for her, that Caitriona Balfe gets to kind of play, not only in her physicality, but also the voiceover elements. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that guilt kind of continues to affect her relationship with Jamie, because at a certain point you would have to think that like she has to make a choice. There's that beautiful moment in the I think it's in the pilot where she's getting her palm read by the Reverend's housekeeper, and they talk about the fact that she has one marriage line, but she's never seen it before. It's not divided, it's forked. And I was like, it obviously that is something that she will have to reconcile at some point. And I know from the series that she eventually chooses Jamie, but in this moment, like it unfortunately, even though they're very passionate and in love in this moment, it seems like he is in this sequence kind of a means to an end for her, a means for her to survive this moment with Blackjack Randall so that she can get back to what she sees as her real husband, Frank. And, you know, obviously when you play with people's feelings like that, it's going to make for some interesting drama.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't. Sorry, go ahead, Gwen. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's really interesting because it kind of reminds me in a way of the film Brooklyn, where you've got the main character from that film who goes back home, and it's almost like she's in a completely different land, especially she is in a completely different land because, like, you know, it takes like a super long boat ride back over to Ireland, you know, from America, and she starts to develop feelings for this guy over there, and she's almost tempted to just sort of give herself over to that, because the longer she stays there, the more it almost feels like, um you know, back in America, it's almost like it was this fever dream where you were off in a faraway land, living this life, but when you're back home, like, everything feels, you know, like sort of more, like maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. And she ultimately decides to go back to America once she's reminded, no, I love my husband and I want to go back there. So I think Claire gets caught up in the fact that she is in this faraway land in a faraway time, and so she kind of allows herself to forget for a little bit, you know, what she was trying to do, and um but then I think once, you know, she has time, like once she's sort of shaken out of that, and then presented with the stones right in front of her, she remembers that, no, I love my husband Frank, I want to get back to him. And so I actually really love that she doesn't even, like, she barely pauses, you know, when she sees the stones, and she runs immediately for them. I think it's a great sort of culmination of this, you know, first half of the season, which really feels like its own season to me, because the show was initially split into two halves, and so like the second half didn't air until like months later.
Yeah, no, I
It
didn't watch
feels
it that way. I watched it because I had watched it a couple of years after the fact. So I was able to watch it right away. Like I didn't have to wait that. How long was it between the two
I think it was
parts?
like a few months,
That would suck.
but so, and I actually watched this about halfway between that, because I did binge this batch of episodes, and then I still had to wait a couple months for the rest of the episodes. But I think it's a great like payoff for this first stretch of episodes, that despite everything she goes through, she still doesn't even think twice about running for the stones to get back to Frank, and but forces intervene that causes that not to work. And then I think the second half of the season is sort of dealing with the fallout of that, and how then her emotions, you know, sort of reeling from that, how her emotions and feelings change. Uh and yeah, so I think it's a very satisfactory like culmination for the love story that's presented in these first episodes. And I just like, man, that whole sequence when Frank, in spite of like everything, you know, that sort of he knows, you know, telling him that this is not possible, but he loves her so much that he's gonna, you know, drive up to the stones and just stand there and call out her name in the hopes that, you know, something comes of it. And then she hears him calling as she's running to the stones, and then he hears her voice, and it's just, oh my god. And this is another moment where Bear McCreary was just killing it with the music. And it's just this is why I like, as much as like, obviously it's Claire and Jamie moving forward in the show, and their love story is so epic and so beautiful, but whenever I watch this early part of the show, and especially this climax at Craignadoon, it's like, oh, you guys were so close, so close, and it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think like my personal opinion is that at this point in the story, I don't think Claire loves Jamie quite yet. Like, I mean, it's still been quite a short period of time. I think she needs him to be her protector, and she is obviously sexually attracted to him. He's very sexy, but I don't know that she loves him in the same way that perhaps she loves Frank. And I do wonder if she had gone through the stones at the end of the episode, and then back to Frank, I don't know that she would have wanted to go back as much as maybe, I don't want to get into anything else, but I do wonder if she would have been content to be back with Frank, and maybe had some thoughts about Jamie and everything. But I think eventually, maybe her and Frank could have made it work, but because she didn't get to go back. But also she has her whole life back there too. Like, it's not even just, like she has her whole world, her whole, like, everything back there. And so that's scary as well, right? Like, you imagine being in a totally different century. You could just, you could stub your toe and die of, like, I don't know, infection or something.
We as fans tend to boil this all down to who's she going to choose. But there is also the fact that, like, but that's also her home.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
like,
It's true. And do you guys know the song, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with? Do you guys know that song? I kind of feel like there's a little bit of that. Like, she probably, she's probably kind of despondent. Like, I'm trying to remember in the book, I don't think in the book, from my recollection, that she's completely like that. She's like, I'm in love with this person. I don't think she was. I don't think she's there yet. But I think it's just like, but I'm lonely. I'm away from my family. Or I'm away from, everything I know. I'm scared, and here you have this person who is willing to protect you and look after you. And basically by the marriage, it's like, that's keeping her from being handed over to the British. Right. So, I mean, she's, and then, so I can understand her wanting to have this lovemaking, this, romantic, thing happen. But I don't know that her heart is quite there yet. That's sort of my feeling.
For me, I'm sort of in between, like, those two places. I think she is starting to fall in love with him. So I think at this point, I don't think it's just that, he's her protector. I think that they have begun to fall in love with each other, but I think that moment comes at a sort of a crucial, that moment of seeing the stones and be presented with this, moment to go back home. I think it happens, like, right in that sort of middle point of, if she decides not to run for the stones, then, like, what's developing between her and Jamie will be solidified, but she's still able to make that decision to have her life as it was before, with Frank. And so I think it's a very interesting, like, moment, and then unfortunately the choice is taken out of her hands, and then the story moves forward in the direction that it goes. But yeah, it's what makes, like I said, it's what makes these first episodes so fascinating for me, just because it's such a, like, beautifully complex and like, intricately told love story that, like, has no easy answer one way or the other. And that's what made me fall in love with the show so much.
I do think, though, like, because obviously you were mentioning she's got these complex feelings. There's probably some guilt there as well. There's probably some, like, sadness, that will she ever get back to the life that she used to have? Like, But I am thinking based on what you're saying, because I was rewatching some of the earlier scenes, and I remember when she sort of is first like dressing Jamie's wounds, and the way she was kind of approaching him, you could see there's something there already, right? So I do think that later, let's say if you said to her later, Claire, what were your impressions when you first met Jamie? I suspect that she probably would admit there was something very strong there at the very beginning, but because of the fact that I had this husband in another century, and I had so many feelings there, I couldn't really like dive in. Like, I think you guys both probably have this experience where you're like, there's something that's stopping you from like going full in on something. Whether it be a relationship or whether it be like a job or whatever, there might be something holding you back. So I think that she can't at this point, like completely give herself over to Jamie. But I think if you were to ask her in hindsight, like, what were your feelings? It was probably already there, but she couldn't do it. Like she just couldn't physically allow herself to have that because the stakes were so high. Right. And getting back to Frank was probably her like, I think that's her inner voiceover. That's always her goal. Like, how do I get back there? Like, how do I escape? How do I do this? So she's had that operation happening all this time. And so she can't just kind of give in and be like, she has to guard herself a little bit. So I guess maybe when I'm saying I don't think she's in love with Jamie, I just think she's just maybe not allowing herself to have that because there's so much at stake for what's going on, I think, at the moment. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but.
Yeah, whereas with Jamie, it's not complicated at all.
No.
And he will later say that he was in love with her
from the moment he saw her.
The moment he saw her. So yeah.
I was yours. Yeah, of course. How could he not?
Yeah, and
she was in her underwear for God's sakes. Which I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, and she fixed his shoulder. Yeah, no, and I mean, I agree with Heidi that Claire has something that is holding her back in this moment. We see this a lot with other storytelling we love, like in Star Wars, the idea that like a character is trying to connect to the Force and they can't do it as effectively because they have essentially a mental block that they need to get past. Like this is the story of Sabine with the Darksaber in Star Wars Rebels, for instance. But in particular for a relationship like this, like Claire and Jamie have a very clear physical attraction, and that he is definitely going out of his way to treat her with respect, which she values in this world where she is unfortunately not being treated with respect by very many people. Even though they value her skills, they still see her as a Sassenach, an outsider, and look on her with suspicion. And then there's like jealousies and political realities that are coming into play, like the whole concept of the idea of that when she discovers that all of these Scottish members of the Scottish clan are in fact part of a larger cell of like the Jacobites who are trying to rise up and overthrow the King of England and restore the Stuart dynasty, and it's a cause that she knows from history is doomed. The fact that when like they go to the Culloden and they see the stones of all the clans there, and one of them is Clan Mackenzie. And so it's like, even if she were to throw herself into this love story, with Jamie, like there's the simple fact that like Jamie is essentially, has pledged his allegiance to the clan, even if he hasn't taken the formal vow. I'm guessing, I think I'm on point with this. When that battle comes, he's probably going to have to go fight in it and potentially die. So it's the kind of thing where she might be swept up in like the dream-like quality of it and the whirlwind romance, but it is in many respects still to her like a dream. And like Heidi said, like if in that moment, she managed to make her way back through the stones and back to Frank before like the further events have happened to solidify her bond with Jamie, I'm sure that like, she would probably think of Jamie on occasion, but she would also think, that was a weird thing that happened to me once upon a time, and it would eventually fade. But of course, I'm getting the sense that because she goes through so much war with the character of Jamie and these people before presumably eventually she does reunite with Frank at some point. By that point, it can't fade. It hasn't faded. It's become too important to her. And so, yes, at this early stage, it really is a moment of like what could have been, and at the, that kind of heartbreaking moment, like the fact I also, to shift it to Frank's perspective, I love the fact that like that final episode, he is essentially like just so broken and despondent because he's been trying to get answers about what happened to his wife and the police can't help him. And then this woman appears out of nowhere and offers him help, but really she and her colleagues are just trying to mug him for the reward money. And which is heartbreaking. And he, beats the shit out of him because he's just in such a bad place. And then, the housekeeper makes the incredible, kind gesture of saying, no, I will not stay silent. I've heard the stories about this Craig Nadoon and people who can pass through time there. Maybe that's what happened to your wife. And he's just basically like presented with that explanation. He's like, no, I'm going to leave. That's the thing that's going to make me leave. But then when he drives past those stones, as, Gwen said, like he can't let her go, so he, even though like, that I think they mentioned earlier in the series, the idea like, when you, speaking of Sherlock Holmes, as Heidi was talking about, when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. He's basically like, that's impossible. She couldn't have time traveled. But then he keeps that door open because he loves her so much. And as they say in Interstellar, love is the one thing we have that is capable of transcending the barriers between time and space. And that is true for Frank as well as is for Claire and Jamie.
Yeah, there was something I was thinking about, but I don't want to mention it because I'm thinking it might be a spoiler. So I'm going to ask Gwen later, and then we could talk about it maybe on the next one. Because I was just thinking about something, but I don't know has been addressed yet. So I won't do that based on my memory, but I'll ask Gwen. I probably have to go, guys, though. This has been so fun.
Well, see, and this is why I was happy that we pushed forward and talked, especially about the wedding and also the Claire's run to the stones and Frank, because those were the things that I wanted to make sure we touched on with you before you had to go. But thank you. Well,
maybe we can talk about Galis, or I can talk with you guys about Galis in the next one, because she's like, there's so much fun stuff.
There's some big Galis stuff.
There's so much good stuff coming in the next.
So we'll be talking about those episodes the week after next. So you can join us for that, right?
Absolutely. And then we're going to do Excalibur, I believe, right? Are we doing Excalibur?
Yes, it'll be 2 weeks after that.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk, because we were talking about Liam Neeson earlier, and he's in that. It's going to be so good. One of my favorites. And then when we come to June, then Jared, you'll be willing to do A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Come on, you don't have to do every episode, but.
I would love to. You usually stream on
House of the Dragon. Apologies.
Yeah. You usually stream on Thursdays, right?
Thursdays at 8 EST.
So that would actually work for me because I get off work early on Thursday.
Oh, so great! Yeah, because I think the episodes will probably air Sunday night in the same time slot as at like 9 o'clock or something. So I know a lot of I don't know. I started doing 8 o'clock Thursdays years ago, and it just seemed to work. And then so we'll touch base. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh my God, thanks so much for having me, you guys. Jared, it was so nice meeting you. I've really enjoyed this.
It was a delight. It was. I'm so happy we're going to be able to have you back on, and that we'll be seeing more of you in the future.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you both. And Gwen, we'll touch base. I'm going to ask you that question later. Because I didn't want to spoil it, just in case.
Great night.
Okay, you guys take care. Bye.
Okay, bye. Oh, that was so great to have her.
It was so much fun. Yeah. I love it when we can have a guest like that.
Yeah. And she's going to be back because she'll be talking more Outlander with us and then Excalibur. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I do want to talk for a little bit longer because there's some stuff that we didn't talk about, because I wanted to make sure that we got to the big moments for those last couple episodes. But I guess I'll start with talking a little bit more about the relationship between Claire and Galis, which is really interesting because, like, Galis at first appears to be very friendly to Claire, and continues to sort of, be very, very nice to her. But there's also the hint that she's fishing for answers. What is your read on Galis, Jared? I'm very interested.
My read on Galis is very complicated because on the one hand, she's such a fun character with her charming her charming skill sets and insights, and the relationship she's forging with Claire. I freaking love the scene where she has her dolt husband that she just completely cons him into, doing whatever she wants, and later then owns up to the fact that, like, that was her goal when she came to this area and married him. It's basically like she found a man with a nice, respectable position, so people could say that she was a respectable woman, but he's too stupid really to know like what she is really up to, so she basically gets to do whatever she wants. And yeah, the actor I mentioned, like, I thought Tobias Menzies was one of my favorite performances in the show outside of the two leads. Lotte Verbeek, who plays Galis, is right up there. Like, she just has an incredibly compelling screen presence. I find her very attractive and very alluring, but again, there are red alarm bells every time. Maybe it's like the kind of the sing-song quality of her voice and the way, as you said, she's kind of fishing for more information. I'm like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I love you, Galis, but I do not trust you. There is something going on.
You are right to feel that way, and I'm not gonna go any further than that. But like, I will just say, like, you will continue to love her and also not trust her one little bit.
It's nice to know that my instincts are correct on this one, because there is definitely an element where I'm just like, it's like, I want to trust you, but that would be a bad idea.
It would absolutely. And that character will go places you will not expect. Just that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, so, and then let's see, somebody else we didn't touch on, except he did get Heidi did mention him, but where did I put the? Oh, here it is. Ned Gowan, who is one of my absolute favorite characters on the show, and you might recognize him from the very beginning of Kingdom of Heaven.
I do.
The bishop.
Yes, I recognized him from that. I also recognized him from House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon. That's right.
He plays Lyman Beesbury, I believe.
Which is so funny because I knew him from this first, and I'm like, it's Ned Gowan, and I'm like, and it's like, oh no, he's not going to meet a good fate.
Yeah, no, I have to say, like, the fact, like, we meet Ned Gowan, I believe in episode 5, and immediately we get the sense that he's a more, respectable individual, and obviously even though he's not as enlightened as we would necessarily like from Claire's perspective of, like, regarding women's ability to practice law, like, he's clearly, respects her intelligence, and she finds is much more comfortable with him than the rest of the parties, Jamie excluded, But yeah, also from the moment we meet him, like within 2 seconds of it, he's coughing up his lungs, and I'm like, that's not going to end well. I think that
I might be pleasantly surprised, but I won't say any more than this.
Maybe it is just asthma then, and the thorn apple was helping. But yeah, ultimately, I loved the fact that, like, it's revealed that, like, yeah, he was this respectable lawyer who gave up his position. He tells Claire this tale about being, like, craving the spirit of adventure. But then it's revealed that no, actually, like, he has a very strong political motivation for doing what he's doing. And the moment when he's the one that she tries to convince, yeah, this whole Jacobite rebellion thing is doomed. And he's basically like, history be damned. Like, I believe in this cause.
Yeah, so much to the point where he's even kind of giving her the cold shoulder a couple scenes later, which I missed on my initial viewing. That doesn't last. He's continues to be very nice towards her, but like, clearly, like, he's not having it with this English woman coming in and telling him that this cause he believes in is doomed. And so yeah, he's a great character, and just he's so nice, and and like he's a safe, like, presence, on the road, and like someone that it kind of reminds me, even though he does not have the ulterior motives of this other character did, but kind of reminds me in sort of early Game of Thrones, the sort of comfortability that there was between Daenerys and Jorah as they're traveling on the road, where she is surrounded by, this tribe of, very aggressive warriors who she's kind of scared of, and her abusive brother, and Jorah is this sort of calming presence, where he's giving her all this information about, history and her family, and giving her advice, and I think, in the way that she's very relaxed by that, even though if she knew everything about Jorah, maybe she wouldn't be, but I think it's a similar kind of thing with Ned, where she feels safe around him, and and we're at this point, everybody else aside from Jamie is very sort of, abrasive towards her. Ned is a friend, and so I think it's a great relationship, and it continues to bear many fruits, in time to come on the show. So yeah, I really enjoyed his character, and like we talked before, like the comedy of when he's at the brothel. Right.
Favorite comedic scenes in the entire show. The fact that, like, at first he seems very uncomfortable around all these women, but then when they come forward with the dress, and then he pulls out his bag of money, and then they're immediately like, "Oh my!" It's like, you want to go upstairs while they make the dress? And he's like, "Okay."
And then that's name one is that the one.
Yeah, and it's like, I wondered who that was, which, who knows? Maybe it's true love. But I also, another great Ned Gowan moment is when they're on the road and he's dealing all the things that they're going to be collecting as tributes, and then he's basically like, "This year I told Dougal specifically we will not accept payments in the form of live pigs," and then, of course, somebody comes over with the pigs, and he's like, 2 pigs, and he, of course, like, "I thought you said no live pigs," and he said, "I did." you get the sense that, like, yes, he believes in this cause, but he's also has a very put upon quality to him with the being the bookkeeper for this nascent rebellion.
I also want to talk a bit more, because even though we did talk about him, but I just feel like he deserves, like, there's so much interesting material to talk about. I want to talk about Dougal some more, just because I find his relationship with Claire so interesting, even though he's at times like her savior, and then at other times an aggressor and someone who's very dangerous for her to be around. But then there are just moments like when they're both sitting by, the Klansman who's just been killed, but who's just been mortally injured by the boar, and just their connection in that scene, and the way that, you know, Claire is caring for him, and how like tender Dougal is towards his clansmen. And like, here's a guy who, like, he's war chieftain of Clan Mackenzie. He very clearly loves his men. And I just think it's such a fascinating look at someone who is he's not really sort of, can't be pigeonholed into being like a good or evil person. He's just wonderfully complicated, and just like, and brought to life by such an amazing actor.
Yeah. No, I think that he's great. Cassie stopped by the chat, by the way. I know.
Hi, Cassie.
Yeah, I'm very.
Watch the show. Watch the show.
Yeah, well, come along with the journey with us. I'm watching the show for the first time too.
Yeah, we're going to be taking our time. Where this was the first 8 episodes. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking about the last 8 episodes of season 1. So please, we would love it if you could come along on the journey with us. But, yeah.
No, and just what you were saying about Dougal. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a richer character for just being more complicated and having these conflicting, loyalties and passions. The fact that he is ultimately, I do think he is loyal to his brother to a point, but that he is also like has this other cause that he clearly believes in, even more. And the fact that, yes, there are moments when Claire earns his respect, like the beautiful moment when they're comforting the dying man, Geordie, after he's been wounded by the boar. Again, boar hunts in these shows are very dangerous. And the fact that there was the great moment when Claire is basically like, all this to basically to hunt down a pig. And they're like, you've clearly never seen one of these things. And, yeah, they're dangerous. But I appreciate the fact that he is like, yes, there are moments when he gains a bit more trust for Claire, but then that trust fluctuates as it would in a real relationship like this. Like, we're used to the convention where like someone does a great act of kindness that finally earns the trust of somebody, and then from then on, it's just like, I trust you absolutely. And it's like, that is not the case with Dougal and Claire. He is very much.
Yeah, and that goes both ways. It's like. Yeah. In any other show, like him saving her for blackjack would be like a great turning point in their relationship, where they're like, on good footing, and they even become like, friends even. And that is not what this show is, because then and like throughout the next episode, like he's doing all this stuff to like make sure that the wedding goes off without a hitch and stuff. But then the episode ends with him making another pass at her, even though she has just married his nephew. And like, and then it's followed up by him, hitting Rupert, for making a lewd comment about her. So it's like, you can't get a read on him. He's like, it's just like, dude, please, be consistent so we know whether to cheer for you or not. But like, that is just not who Dougal is, and like, he's all the better character for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the dark, his kind of dark attraction to Claire is definitely the aspect of his character that is meant to make us feel the most uncomfortable. Like, the fact when, as you said, immediately after, like the fact that he doesn't decide to marry her himself, he marries her to Jamie, but then he approaches her and is basically like, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy other pleasures, with me. And understandably, it's like she's feeling very confused, not only because he tried to assault her earlier. And it's just a fact that, like, there's an interesting dynamic with the entire Mackenzie clan, where like they're all like kind of taking pot shots at Claire, but then there's the scene when they're on the road and a member of another clan makes a comment about Claire, and then they're basically all like, let's go kick that guy's ass. It's basically like, we get to make fun of you because you're one of us, but anyone else does it, you're
not going to help anybody else.
Yeah, which again, it's like it's a familial dynamic, but it's like taken to the extreme. Oh, and before we move on from Dougal, I just want to say one of my absolute favorite scenes involving Dougal is the I want to get the name of it right, so because it is not what I originally thought it was. It is the game, the shinty game. The shinty game that is basically the field hockey on 18th century steroids that happens after after they come back from the hunt and Dougal is reeling from Geordie's death, and the way he deals with it is to pick up the shinty stick and go charging into this game and start hitting everybody with the stick, including Jamie, and to the point that they get into a physical altercation that Jamie ultimately has to end by flipping Dougal over onto his back. And it's like, you taught me well. I did too well.
That's still that's two things that Dougal's sort of processing. One is, yes, it's the loss of Geordie, and he's sort of working out his pain and his anger about that, but also it's still residual anger from the night before with the whole thing with the oath swearing, because yes, Jamie is very crafty about it and does it in a way that sort of gets him out of trouble, but Dougal is still pissed about it. Yeah. And so yeah, that's them working out their issues.
Yeah. And then, but the issues are not fully resolved, because of course then there's the idea that Dougal is basically taking Jamie on this rent collecting tour so that he can show off the horrific scars on Jamie's back and engender sympathy. And there's a moment when Jamie is basically like, I think this is kind of shitty what you're doing to me. But Dougal is basically just like, as long as you live on our lands, you will do as you're told, as you said you would.
Yeah, the Rent episode is has one of my favorite musical moments also from the series, and it's when Claire has an idea of what's actually going on, that Dougal is just pocketing, money for himself, but then it turns on a dime when she hears the name of Stuart in one of his speeches, and then Bear brings in the Skyboat song theme, and it turns into this wonderfully patriotic moment of Dougal rallying the Klansmen, and and it's just it's why Bear McCreary is Bear McCreary. It's just he's a fucking genius. And I just love that, because it's Claire seeing these people in a different light when she was making certain assumptions, which it's a reasonable assumption knowing Dougal, but also, like I said, Dougal is a wonderfully complex person, and given the way he's treated her, it's fair that she's not necessarily looking to take in the whole image of Dougal. But one thing about him is that he is insanely devout in his allegiance to his clan and his country, and so yeah, it's I think that's a beautiful moment, and it just sends oh, I just stopped thinking. Chills up my spine watching it.
Yeah. No, I love the moment that when Claire, as you said, realizes that this is in fact raising funds for an army, for a rebellion that will to try and restore the Catholic king to the English and Scottish thrones, and it changes her perspective, where she goes from thinking of them as basically a little more than thieves to essentially these kind of brave men committed to a cause that she knows unfortunately is ultimately doomed, and that is, she can't help but feel sympathy for them in that moment, because she knows what it is like to fight for your country, because she just did that effectively as a member of the British Army in World War II. Like, they were fighting for their way of life, and they ultimately were triumphant, and these men will not be. And so I think she really wants to, you know, try and, you know, dissuade them, but she also knows she can't really change that history. But it also, as I said, is kind of an incentive for her to realize that you know, this is not going to have a happy ending, and maybe it's better for her and all concerned if she gets out of it before that ending comes. But of course, her feelings for Jamie will complicate it.
Yeah, but then there's also the thing, like, even if she was able to tell them this in a way that they would believe it and not call her either a crazy person or a witch, like, would that stop them anyway? Probably not. You know, and yeah. And speaking of, since I did bring up Bear McCreary again, I am just going to show off my soundtrack for Volume 1 soundtrack. This was specifically for these first 8 episodes, which I remember picking this up at Barnes and Noble. Those were the days when I could go to a actual store on a soundtrack's release day and buy it.
Yeah, I since you mentioned the soundtrack and the music, I wanted to mention another one of my my favorite scenes from these first 8 episodes, which it is a musical moment, although it's the dialogue that really makes it so. It's the moment with Gwilyn the Bard, and when he's you know, your namesake perhaps, or a distant takeoff on it, but yes, the fact that when he is singing this very beautiful song in a language that Claire does not understand, and then Jamie begins to translate it for her, and it turns out it's exactly the information that she was hoping for and needs when she talks about, now this is the one about a man out late on a fairy hill on the eve of salmon, who hears the sound of a woman singing sad and plaintive from the very rocks of the hill. I am a woman of Balnain, the folk have stolen me over again, the stones seem to say. I stood upon the hill when the wind did rise, and the sound of thunder rolled across the land. I placed my hands upon the tallest stone and traveled to a far distant land, where I lived for a time among strangers who became lovers and friends. But one day I saw the moon come out and the wind rose once more. So I touched the stones and traveled back to my own land and took up again with the man I had left behind. And that was a moment I got chills down my spine, because obviously that is exactly what has happened to her. And her response of, she came back through the stones. She did. They always do. Implying that there have been more like her. And
actually, I'll tell you something that was running through my head early on in this show, which hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't mean it can't still happen in this final season, but I don't think it's likely to. I think, like, that's on the money, that it's, you know, that because others have gone on similar journeys, but back early on, I was like, wait, is it Claire? Does she travel further back in time and she's actually hearing her own story? That hasn't happened as of yet, so I don't think that's likely the case. But, well, like, when you're dealing with time travel stories, you're like, wait, could it be? But yeah, no, that's amazing, and that singer, his name is hold on, probably, I'm sure I am butchering this, but Dillabride Macmillan, who actually returns to sing one of the renditions of the opening title song in a later season. So, so yeah, it's like these scenes of him, you know, singing in the hall are just so wonderfully evocative. Yeah, it's just, I love it so much. And, yeah, and I want to spend a couple more minutes talking about Colum as well, just because, you know, I mentioned how he's wonderfully complex because, you know, he's dangerous in a way that's a little less obvious than Dougal. But as you said, just his whole aura and, you know, and the fact that he has to be very strong to command the loyalty of his people, and something that's not really explicitly, you know, stated in these early episodes is the, you know, and some of this information does come from the prequel, but I imagine it's probably talked about in the book too, is the fact that normally the Laird of Clan Mackenzie would also be the war chief, but because of Colum's situation, those you know, those duties are actually divided between him and his brother. Hence the uneasy sort of, you know, politics of the situation, of the fact that Dougal has always coveted, you know, the position of Laird for himself, um, and so it just, so there's a love between the brothers, and so, like, you know, you talked about earlier during the oath swearing, I think it does come from a true and honest place, but also when Doodle walks around the corner, he grabs a drink and proceeds to get drunk. So, like, I don't think he's feeling great about it either, but he is going to, like, keep his oath to Colum, and so I think their relationship is really interesting, and we do end up getting more of that, you know, in the second half of the season, and even beyond that. It's, yeah, it's just so good, and both actors just kill it so much. They're so good, and yeah, I don't know. There's just something so wonderfully compelling about Colum that, even as I'm saying, like, he's not to be trusted either, but yet you really like him because he's just has, again, this air of nobility about him, and this is a man that is worthy of the respect that he's given, and and the fact that, like, there's a moment when Jamie is, you know, brought in to do the oath swearing, and, like, there's a moment where, like, everybody's drawn out their weapons to potentially murder Jamie on the spot for not taking the oath, and like, uh and both Dougal and Colum are just kind of looking at him like, be very, very careful. And then when Jamie does what he does, then Colin breaks out to this huge grin. And it's like, it's just so, it's like, it's a dangerous situation, but, like, so it's this weird balance between this dangerous situation that Jamie finds himself in, but then this love and respect that his uncles also have for him in their own different ways. So that for me is like one of the best scenes of the season. And but it's just so funny how it turns on a dime and all of a sudden, hey, everything's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's madness and it's politics. I love the way that Gary Lewis plays the scene when Jamie is approaching to give him up. He has a very kind of wide-eyed, intense stare, basically just like, do not fuck this up. If you see the wrong thing, we're gonna have no choice but to kill you. But Jamie threads that needle, which again shows his intelligence and his skill that would make him a good laird if the time came. But yeah, it definitely the politics of the Scottish lairds. It definitely. I can't believe we've gotten 3 hours into a stream about old Scotland and haven't mentioned Braveheart once, but it definitely reminded me of.
There's some music that I recognize from Braveheart throughout the season too.
Yeah. So I mean, and obviously this takes place centuries after Braveheart, but definitely I'm like, yeah, they're things haven't changed that much.
To kind of switch gears for a second, because obviously we talked about some moments from the episode, but I really wanted to talk about Tobias Menzies' monologue in episode 6
Yeah.
about yeah, his torture of Jamie and the lashes, and because it's just one of the most chilling uh pieces of writing and performance that I've ever seen. And I think it's the episode that really solidifies Tobias Menzies as like one of the most like talented British actors in the world, honestly, and especially like it cements his place as like an enormous part of this show. He won't be like, as I said, the show changes a lot over the course of over its run, so he won't be necessarily as much of a staple of it, throughout the entire run of the show. But what he does in these early seasons is just so impactful, and I feel like this scene just like sort of sets the tone of, just the fact that this is an incredibly dangerous individual, and part of I think what makes him so dangerous, and what makes Tobias's performance so incredible is that what he's saying about, he recognizes that there's a darkness growing in himself. Yes, he's manipulating Claire and lulling her into a place where he wants her to be, but it's similar to what Frank says earlier about interrogation, the fact that you use truth mixed in with the fiction, and I think that Blackjack is giving a lot of truth in this scene, and that's part of what makes him even more twisted and evil, is that he recognizes this aspect of himself, but that but that he but he believes he belongs there in that darkness, and so he will continue on that path. And it's just the way he delivered when he says, you know all they saw was the horror, but I saw the truth. That boy and I were making a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's just, oh my God, it's so twisted, but so goddamn good.
Yeah, no, I mean that the moment, what I love most about his speech, which I was trying to find and pull up because I think the whole thing is so incredibly compelling, I can't find the full thing, but what I love so much about it in its dark, twisted way is the fact that, as you said, this is an interrogation scene, and he is trying to get answers from Claire, and he's doing it by being truthful and honest about himself in a kind of a terrifying way. Like classically, you might think like, oh, maybe the way to actually get information from her would be to, try to charm her and say like, I'm actually not that bad. We're both English. Maybe we can help each other out. But she's seen the darkness in him, and she would not believe that. So he leans into it, and he basically, shows her the monster that he has decided to become. And the fact of the matter is that when it draws out her empathy, because he basically is presenting himself as, I am a monster, but I am lost in many ways. Like, I don't know how to get out of this pattern that I've found myself in. And she starts to try to help him, and he seizes on that and turns it into the thing he needs to essentially leverage his power over her. And that's great writing, in addition to a great performance by Tobias Menzies. And the fact of the matter that I think that I also shouted out the scene in episode 8 where he allows Claire to think that she's in control with the whole Duke of Sandringham bit. But all the while he suspects that she's lying, and he's holding the trump card so that when he lays his trap about, the Duchess, who does not exist, she walks right into it. And the second he closes that trap on her and she realizes that she has been caught and just starts to scream, like, it was one of the most effective. And that was the moment for me, like both that episode 6 and episode 8, that I recognized like what a towering and formidable, performance that this character is given, and the depth of his evil.
I can't wait for you to see who plays the Duke of Sandringham.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because there's some mystique around him in these episodes because we don't actually ever see him, but it's like, oh, Claire, if you had just met the Duke of Sandringham one time, you would not have fallen for Blackjack's trickery in that moment. But she's so good in that scene though, because she really plays up the role of being an agent of the Duke, and and so much to the point where you actually think that she might get one over on him for a second, but no. And then to just end the season on the moment of he's assaulting her, and then Jamie busts through the window, and and the fact that and Blackjack is so amused by the revelation that this is the guy that they married Claire to, and he is just absolutely tickled by this and just starts laughing, and but just ending with Claire's, I'll ask you to take your hands off my wife. It's so good.
No,
were you a little bit pissed off at me that when the episode ended with me having to stop there, because it is
I mean, a little bit, but I knew that we were going to be continuing in the 2 weeks, so I was perfectly fine. I was also kind of glad we didn't have to watch more, because I probably got started a little bit too late, and then when I logged on to Netflix to start watching, I'm like, oh, these are long episodes. Yeah. This is going to take me a legit 8 hours to get it through all of this. And yes, we got a new commenter. Hello. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, I will say, I love the whole show, obviously. But yeah, there is just something incredibly magical about this first season. I think they knocked it out out of the gate, and in a lot of ways, this, because of the settings in these early seasons. It's just, I love Scottish history, and this deals with a lot of that stuff, and the show will actually end up going off in different directions eventually. But it's why I've enjoyed the prequel series so much too, because it really, captures those early season vibes of the original show. So and that's why it's been a lot of fun going back to watch these episodes for this discussion. So but yeah, no, and I just find it so fascinating what Tobias was able to pull off with Blackjack Randall, and then we go, back to Frank, and we're not repulsed by him because Frank is just such a wonderfully different person. And from what I understand, he's not, I don't think he's quite as sympathetic in the books. I think they did a really great job of rounding out his character more for the show, and I think Tobias's performance has a lot to do with that. I don't think there's not necessarily anything that's hugely different, but I think it's just the difference of when you have an actor bringing a part to life, they're going to bring something to that role that's unique, and Tobias just has like this innate like goodness in him that's that is just, really nice and also slightly adorable as well. So yeah, I think he's one of the best casting choices they made on this show.
No, I mean, like I said, I've obviously seen him in a lot of things beforehand. I think by the time this is over, this will definitely be my favorite performance of his, because it's been, already I'm just been so extraordinarily impressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously we talked a lot about the wedding episode, but I want to like center in on the wedding itself. Just by the time we get to that point in the episode, just again the music by Bear McCreary and like the reciting of the wedding vow, which I put in the in in my post for the stream today, which I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Yeah, you are blood of my blood and bone of my bone. I give you my body that we two might be one. I give you my spirit until our lives shall be done. It's just like, it's so fucking romantic, beautiful, and yeah, just the way it's filmed, it's so dreamlike, and like, when they're outside and and they reveal the dress and it turns from like a cold Scotland day to like the sun shining, and you know and she's so funny because she's completely drunk. And she's like, I don't even know your name.
Yeah.
It's just like, but then once they go inside, it's just, oh god, it's just so sweeping and so romantic, and yeah, like I said, I was holding in my breath so many times in this episode. It was just, yeah, this is why I love romance. It's just makes me long for it in my own life.
Yeah, it makes sense. I definitely had a moment where I was thinking, I wonder what the over and under is of Gwen sighing during this sequence that's going on. I bet it's at least 7.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also I love this sequence, and the fact that it is ultimately these two characters, embarking on this journey, on this adventure together, and the natural kind of like bond that starts to develop as they're just talking in their room, and yes, eventually getting it down to the business of consummating the marriage, which in classic medieval fashions, like we've got everyone's basically pounding on the table. It's like, do it already. Eventually they do, but then they do it again and again. The beautiful moment where Jamie, gives her the pearls. It's like, these were my mother's. They were very precious to me, as are you. And you're just like, this is starting to become a real. But definitely from him to her, but all the more so from her to him. And yes, I do think that when it comes to like their bonds in the subsequent episodes, you mentioned the moment where he's at like, is it always like this? And she's like, it's a lot like this, but no, this is special. This is different. And yeah, his earnest concern for her, the rather, it starts out as beautiful, but then horrifying moment where they're trying to have sex in the meadow, and then the two British deserting soldiers come upon them and try to, again, assault Claire, and they have to kill them. And that is a reminder of the fact that how dangerous and radical their union is, not only because they are literally from separate times, but they are an English woman and a Scotsman, which is something that is, at this time, is naturally going to be very fraught. And like, not to gloss over the fact that like the whole reason of her becoming, getting married is so that she can now become Scottish and be subject to Scottish law. And again, they do that to save her from Blackjack Randall. But like, that is a sacrifice that she is making. And of course, it's informed by the fact that, like, by her time, you know, Scotland has been fully brought into Great Britain, so she probably thinks of herself more as like British than English in a certain way, but it is still, you know, a radical choice at the time.
I'm gonna bring them up now because I don't necessarily want that to be the way we finish the stream. Not that they're not great, but like it's you know, I will finish off the stream with like more of a summation of things. We haven't really given due time to the comic relief of.
Oh yeah, we mentioned them of Angus and Rupert.
Rupert.
Yeah, I mean they are, as I said, played a little bit more for jokes. The fact that, like, they're so exasperated with having to watch Claire, but then she's exasperated with them. The really funny moment where they both have their eye on the same woman and Claire has them draw sticks, and I think Angus wins, but then Rupert is very put out. But then it turns out the woman actually liked Rupert better, and so when she's going back to the kitchen later, she sees the woman hooking up with Rupert, and she looks at Angus, and he just kind of shrugs, like, "Hey, what can you do?"
But then I love then when she goes to drug and and she's like, "Drink up." And
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is actually, I think, my single favorite joke in the entire first season is when she's like, "It's a sedative." Is that Spanish? Oh my God.
Share it with all your friends. Yeah, it's like just "'tis strong," and she goes, "It is." Oh God. But then, like, yeah, like Rupert I kind of always loved, because yes, he can be crass, but like, you know, but but he also has his moments where he's actually quite nice, and you know, he's very brave. Angus is rougher around the edges.
Yeah.
Like it took some time for me to warm up to Angus, and I do like that. It's like you can start to see it towards the end of these episodes where, like, you know, he finally starts warming up to Claire, and you know, especially by the time, like, he's training her on how to use the knife, and you know, it's I think that, like, once she's brought in as family, you know, I think that's like a big sort of turning point for him, and yeah, and like they're an acquired taste early on, but like you end up having so much love for these guys, you know, as the season goes on, that, like, yeah, I love them. But it's just so funny how they start off so antagonistic with Claire, you know, being you know, the people following her around for Dougal, and but then as the perspective starts to shift, uh and these become more and more Claire's people, and it's just great to see.
Yeah, and I mean they follow a very established trope of, like, the two, like, kind of somewhat hapless sidekicks, one of whom is a little on the portlier side and the other is a little, you know, thinner and meaner. And I love the line from when Claire's like, they all hate me, and Jamie's like, "Nah, they don't hate you. Well, Angus maybe, but Angus hates everybody." But yeah, I can see how, as the time goes on, then the bonds will soften. But yes, for the most part, in this first season, I got a little bit exasperated with them at times when they were hindering Claire, like being a little coarse towards her. But they were just such an ever renewing source of comedy that I did enjoy their presence.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, and yeah. It's hard for me to, like, there's obviously more story to come with them, but I can't say too much yet, but like, um yeah, I think you will feel things for these guys you're not expecting. But yeah, it's really good. And then let's see. I want to make sure that I hit all the points. Yeah, we talked about Leary. We don't really have to get too much more into her until I think when we do the next batch of episodes, and there's a lot more story with her. Oh, I do want to.
No, I was just
Sorry,
going to say, I understand that Jamie's sister, Jenny, is going to be a bigger character in the show because
yes.
I don't think we get as much of her in the first of the episodes. But when I saw the actress Laura Donnelly popped up, I'm like, oh, I like her. So hopefully she'll get some more.
It's the only, and I will say, like, you won't have to worry about this for quite a while, but it's actually the only real instance of like a recasting in this show, unfortunately, where when season 7 rolled around, they had to recast the part because Laura Donnelly wasn't available. But prior to that, she plays the part for multiple seasons, and she's just great. I love her so much. And yeah, there's she's only really in the flashback in this season. We'll actually meet her properly in the next batch of episodes, um, but yeah, it's unfortunate that in these episodes we really only get to see her in the context of how horrendously she's treated by Blackjack in that instance, because she's an extraordinarily strong woman, and you'll see more of that as the show goes on. And then you actually, like, you wouldn't know this yet, but you've actually also, believe it or not, even though in the main timeline he's deceased, you have actually seen Jamie's father. Um and how exactly will get revealed in the next episodes. But I only mention that because, again, like, when Heidi was on, we were talking about the prequel series, and obviously he's one of the main characters of that prequel show. So but yeah, and then let's see. Also, like, we didn't talk a little bit about you know, in the episode, the garrison commander, like before Blackjack actually arrives on scene, Claire has the whole episode where, she's feeling very comfortable around, the British soldiers, and she thinks that she's in a, sort of safe space. But then, I think we get early hints that she should not be as comfortable as she's been, especially with the way they're addressing Dougal, and there's sort of lack of respect for the Highlanders, and her actually getting a more complex view of things, like, comes out in the way that she responds to things they say about the Highlanders, and especially once Blackjack comes in, she is more pronounced in stating her, opinions on all that, and which sort of sets her up to be, unfortunately, in the position of being at Blackjack's mercy. But I thought that was really interesting, and a big part of that is because we get to see a lot of, like, British actors acting very British.
I wanted to shout out John Heffernan, who plays Brigadier General Oliver Lord Oliver Thomas. He gets to have so much fun being such a pompous, quintessentially British, twit when he is he's talking about casting all these insults at the Scottish people, and yes, Claire does kind of step in it, even though she is very comfortable initially with these groups. I love the antagonism between Brigadier General Thomas and Blackjack Randall. It reminded me a little bit of the dynamic between Lord Cornwallis and Tavington in The Patriot.
Oh my God! Okay, like obviously Blackjack is absolutely horrendous, but the whole thing with going back over to the door and like hitting his boots against the door and then like taking his coat and going like this, and he's like, I assume I'm suitably presentable now. And he's like, oh, just get on with it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, and obviously Lord Cornwallis was more competent than this guy, but I do love the fact that Blackjack just is like, yeah, no, he's an idiot. I have no respect for him. And I can definitely imagine Blackjack having caused this guy some problems. And to call out one of my favorite lines from The Patriot of the whole, like, Tavington, damn him, damn that man. I can imagine this Lord Thomas being like, Blackjack Randall, damn him, damn that man.
And then the way he pours out
the expensive
the drink and then drops the bottle.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh God! Like, see, even like a despicable monster like Blackjack has some comedy.
Yeah.
In him, but yeah, you know, and you know, a couple side to it. I actually really liked the British soldier who actually, you know, from his, you know, point of view, comes to Claire's rescue. First in the
episode, I believe.
Like the village that they go to, and and then also later when she's having it out with Dougal and he comes up with, you know, all the other soldiers and he's like, I asked you again, madam, are you all right? And so like, yeah, it's a shame they weren't all like him. She would have been okay. But then the other like hapless, you know, young soldier who is just so scared to death of a Blackjack that he ends up pretty much doing whatever he says. Yeah, like I get it, but he needs to grow a spine and not do whatever he's told.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but I feel like he's got a bad end coming for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, it's terrible, like, when Blackjack is having him kick Claire on the ground, like, it's probably the hardest thing to watch in these entire episodes, even with the more gruesome violence. But yeah, it goes to show, again, you have to take charge of your own soul and own morality, and even though Blackjack is this man's superior, like, he had a choice in that moment, and he made it. But I do think that I think it's Lieutenant Jeremy Foster, you know, is the more decent British soldier, such as it is. And I do love the moment when he is in the and they don't necessarily know he's the British officer, or at least he's not wearing his red coat. But like when they are, again, the Scots are kind of mistreating Claire, and then he tries to come up to him, and they're basically like, back the hell off. And he's like, she's our guest, and he's like, do you treat all your guests this way? And it's kind of it's a sign that maybe there's a little bit of moral gray area going on here.
Which actually reminds me of another thing we didn't really talk about, which is connected to all that, the wool walking scene where Claire meets the women, which I think is a great scene because it really, I think it's sort of illustrating the beginnings of her, even though she may not realize this is what's happening, but I think it's the beginnings of her sort of falling in love with the culture. And
I think it's a hard way to fall in love with the culture, but it tells you that it's authentic. That like if you are willing to stick your hands into a bucket of warm piss and start kneading the wool, and then be ready to supply said piss for round two, you can tell she's starting to go native a little bit.
But she's clearly having a good time. And also they're treating her nice, which is something
Yeah.
she's not had a whole lot of.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is kind of funny when what is it? It's Angus who walks in on.
Yeah.
She's over the pot, and it's like, oh my god, you could not have picked a worse moment to walk in on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and yeah, I think we've covered just about everything. Were there any things that we didn't talk about that you wanted to um
No.
zero in?
No, I mean there were a couple of scattered moments, but we managed to actually come back around to them. Like I was like, I want to make sure we talk about Claire drugging Angus and the sedative joke. I want to make sure we talk about the Lord Thomas and and his whole vibe. But yeah, I think I'm happy with everything that we've discussed so far. And the good news again is that if we missed anything, we will have another opportunity to talk about it in 2 weeks. So.
I know one thing I want to come back to, and it actually takes us both back to the beginning and to the end of the episodes, and that is the character of oh wait, let me make sure I get the name right. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought it was. The character of Reverend Wakefield,
Oh yeah, he's a
played by
good
the great James Fleet.
yeah.
Who we were talking about back when we did our Sense and Sensibility stream,
Yeah.
actually. And
Which
he's in a number of Jane Austen adaptations. Yeah,
yeah,
he just fits well in a period piece.
Yeah, and there's actually a nice bit of circuity going on here because my understanding is in that new Sense and Sensibility movie, Caitriona Balfe will be playing Mrs. Dashwood. So
Yes.
uh,
Which I am like, I might be like bitter about them redoing Pride and Prejudice for Netflix, but I'm actually really excited about the new version of Sense and Sensibility.
yeah.
And not just because it's Caitriona Balfe who's going to be in it. But no, Reverend Wakefield is great. This is a character who has a relatively small part in the series, but it's an important part. Um, and I just sort of I love the early scenes of him and Frank sort of geeking out about the family history and like all that stuff. And but I really love his stuff in the last episode where, Frank tells him what he did in the alleyway, and um and the Reverend counsels him to like, you know evil has but one cup, and the Nazis drank from it long. You've had but a sip. Let it be your last. And it's just really powerful. And I won't give anything away, but there's a little boy in some of these scenes with the Reverend who ends up being important. Uh, Little Roger. So keep him in the back of your mind. But yeah, that was a nice Easter egg, I think, for fans early on in the show's run. But yeah, I think it's a wonderfully like understated performance, and I really liked him, and I just really loved, especially in the last episode, the focus given to Frank's side of the story, which I thought was sort of a brilliant way to do that last episode, even though clearly it's, there's as much like Claire and Jamie's stuff as well. But I feel like Frank is kind of given like half of the episode to sort of be the protagonist to close out this first half of the season. And I thought it was a great creative choice to like open the episode with a phone ringing, so you're like, what, wait a second. um so yeah, I loved all the stuff in the 40s and in Inverness and yeah, and so I thought Reverend Wakefield was a great, part of that, and like I said, um, he'll be important moving forward if especially to one character, if not like like I said, not a huge part, but it's an important part. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I gave him props for that. Okay. So, and do you have anything else you want to say? Any sort of like overall thoughts, or maybe you know, uh, what you're looking forward to, and what theories or hopes you might have?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm very much looking forward to getting to the back half of season one and the rest of the show because, like I said, I really did enjoy these 8 episodes. I am definitely keen. The number one kind of, I mean, obviously, I want to know like how Claire and Jamie escape from Blackjack Randall's clutches yet again. But then once we get back, presumably to the Clan Mackenzie, I want to know what the deal with Galus is because she is setting off such intriguing alarm bells in my mind. I am definitely I'm a little worried about what little Larry is going to do when she finds out that her crush married Claire married her crush. I don't think that's going to go well. And then yes,
He does
ultimately.
not handle it well.
No. And then I ultimately am very interested to see like how essentially the time travel aspect of this story continues because I do presume at some point, Claire will return to her own time. Like there was that moment in the first episode when there's the mysterious man looking up at Claire's window, and Frank approaches him and then he brushes it away and doesn't get a look at his face, and I'm like that's Jamie probably, isn't it? it's probably Claire returned to her own time and now Jamie followed her and now he's mournfully looking up at her because she left. But we'll see. That could be completely wrong about that. But I am mostly looking forward to just seeing how this story continues to unfold. And yes, because like I mean, I have heard, for instance, like that as you said, the show evolves in its later seasons and goes to a different location. Maybe one a little closer to where we live. But I also I'm not necessarily in a hurry to leave this particular Scottish milieu because it's just such a rich venue for storytelling.
Yeah, there's just something that, and to be clear, I actually think that as far as filming locations go, I'm pretty sure the show has remained in Scotland.
Yeah.
It's just that Scotland has then stood in for other locales.
Yeah.
Which when you've got all the wonderful vistas and stuff of Scotland, why wouldn't you utilize all that beautiful country? But yeah, but like yeah, just like stories set in like Scotland, like in these time periods, like they just hit different and they're so fun. I don't like, maybe it's the whole fighting against an aggressor with a superior fighting force, and and the whole William Wallace thing. We all grew up with Braveheart, and it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just innate. I've always felt like as part of why I think it's really funny that I've ended up adopting a Celtic name, because I think I've sort of always felt a little Scottish inside. And again, that's probably just because I loved Braveheart so much as a kid. But I remember when I was in my teenage years, I kept trying to experiment with putting on a Scottish accent, and it just always turned into a bad Mel Gibson Braveheart,
Yeah.
accent.
That was one thing I promised myself I would not do. I'm not going to try to do a Scottish accent because I will inevitably not make it sound as lyrical as Sam Heughan. So
yeah. So yeah. I'm so glad we're doing it this way because having you just watch the episodes as we go along, because you mentioned like Game of Owns, and like both of us were huge, you know were and like okay, I haven't been as good about keeping up with Game of Owns, but I'm still
Yeah,
subscribed to their podcast, so
me too.
I'm still a loyal listener. But especially like back in the day, like you mentioned like being sullied and unsullied, and like
Yeah,
it's just, oh, it takes me back to those
yeah,
heydays of watching Game of Thrones, and so to do something like that with this show on our channel, it's really a lot of fun because we've never done something like that before,
yeah.
and so I'm glad we are now. And yeah, and one like final thing that I will say, and also to anybody who maybe is starting this journey with us, which again we would love for you to do, but also for you, Jared, just a word of caution. The next batch of episodes, in particular, the final 2 episodes, a bit of a content warning because they do have a pretty um, awful depiction of sexual assault and rape, um, which is it's uh, the way it's done, and who it centers around sort of defies what is normally done with those types of storylines. So like I feel like it was done sort of, it's clearly it's part of the story, it was in the books, like and it's a very important sort of part of the story of the show, um but it is difficult to watch too. So I just thought I would go ahead and warn you about that in advance. And I think it's probably the darkest moment the show has, and then from there on out. Not to say there's not anything dark after that, but I think the more it's probably the most difficult part of the show to watch, but it's still, like I said, it is important for telling the story of these characters. So but I just wanted to throw that out there so you weren't caught off guard by it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that that's a good idea, particularly for our viewers. I have a pretty strong stomach when it comes to watching violence on television, but obviously this is never an easy subject. And I know that there are certain people who basically like, I never want to see this in my televised entertainment ever under any circumstances. I have always been of the philosophy that like, if you're telling stories set in a period when, sexual assault was very commonplace, then you need to engage with it and you need to give it the gravity and the weight that such an awful subject requires, but you should not shy away from doing it just to try to give a sanitized version of events. So if it sounds like if that's what the show does, then I will ultimately appreciate it for the story purposes.
And I think that it was part of actually the episodes got acclaim in particular because the way they showed it and the way they dealt with it was um and again, it may not like concern a character that you're expecting, and like, but the fact that it showed like the emotional fallout of that, and didn't like cut away, and like it dealt with it in a way so that you sort of felt the sort of the horror of what was actually happening, and it's something that will the emotional fallout of it will continue to be dealt with uh in the future on the show. So in that way, I you know um I know that a lot of people sort of applauded that, and but it's still very difficult to watch. So like, yeah, so that warning should go out there for anybody if you don't want to watch that, like that's completely fine. But but yeah. So again, just wanted to throw that out there so nobody's caught off guard. And especially since we will inevitably be talking about that, on the next stream as well. But again, if you're still on board for that, that's great. We would love to have you join us for that discussion as well, which we'll be having in 2 weeks, because next week we're actually taking a break, and then we'll be back to talk about the second half of season 1 of Outlander, and then the week after that we're starting with Maul Shadow Lord.
Nice.
Which I cannot wait, and I'm so annoyed that I can't we can't finish up the stream and I can't go watch it right now because Disney Plus never runs the animated shows at 9 o'clock like they do with the live action shows, so it actually doesn't drop until 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I will probably watch it sometime tomorrow, and have to avoid spoilers until I can watch it. But yeah, I've been waiting years for that show or something like it, and I'm just I'm so excited that it's finally here. And when we talk about it, it's going to be great. And then we also have our Excalibur stream coming up, which Heidi will be joining us for that as well. And yeah, have you watched the movie yet?
Trying to save it for a little bit closer, but I probably will. I'll be having some more time to watch stuff hopefully in the next couple weeks, because like I said, I'm going to be taking a couple days off. The reason we're taking a week off next week is because my sister is getting married, so it'll be very, very busy around that time. But then hopefully things will settle down a little bit. And yes, I'm so stoked for Maul Shadow Lord. Thrilled that we got a season 2 renewal announcement before season 1 even premiered. That gives me a lot of faith that they have a lot of confidence in the show. And yeah,
I will tell you, when I saw that the finale episode, the season finale episode was called Finale, I was a little bit worried.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered if it was a placeholder title, but I did think if it's a 1-season show, it's a 1-season show. But I'm very glad that it's we're going to get at least one more.
Well, and I also heard something from one of the producers that said that they're actually going to try and defy the sort of 3-season standard, and that they would love for the show to go on for many years.
That would be lovely, because then we would actually get to see a little bit more of Maul's life, and maybe eventually get to Kira. But I, even if it's not that's not the story they're telling, I'm just so psyched to have a Maul show and to have Star Wars back on our screens once again, both in the animated form and on the big screen with The Mandalorian and Grogu in a little under 2 months. So.
Yeah, which will be coming soon. We'll be doing a stream about that the weekend it comes out, as a matter of fact. So because we got to strike when the iron's hot on that one.
We do.
But yeah, so got all that stuff coming up. Hope you guys will join us for all that. And yeah, just and Jerry, I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to start this journey, and and talk about the show with me, because this has been one of my holy grails ever since I started the channel, and it just never felt like the right time. And I emotional investment wise, this is up there with the streams that we've done for Pride and Prejudice, Lord of the Rings, that type of stuff, because it's just it is one of my favorite shows, and I have such an emotional attachment to it, both because of the show itself, but also just because of the fact that I shared it with my mom, and and with her no longer being here, it's just I talking about the show and enjoying the show helps me feel connected to her, and so I'm really glad I could share the show with you and Heidi as well. So
yeah, I'm very glad to be on this journey with you, Gwen. I don't know exactly how long it'll take us to get through all 8 seasons, but I imagine it'll be a little while, and then we'll find our next long rewatch project after the Star Wars films and Outlander, and then who knows, maybe by the time we're done, we'll finally be ready to talk about Game of Thrones. And yeah, but anyway, I really enjoyed these first 8 episodes. Really looking forward to what's coming next. And as I said, I solemnly swear I will do my best to stay spoiler free, at least in terms of like the big plot developments. And looking forward to going on this adventure. And yeah.
I do want to say, like, it was so funny because when I first started watching the show, I was at the bookstore and, like, sometimes you just do stupid things that you don't know why you did them, but you couldn't help yourself. I was, like, looking at, like, the books of, like, the future books in the series, and I read, like, a blurb on the back of one of them, and it was, like, I think it was, like, the 6th or I think it was like the 7th book actually. And I read something that I was utterly perplexed by. I'm like, wait, how did they get there? From this point. And so it's like I carried that knowledge of spoiler like throughout my entire watching the show, but I just had no clue like how it would ever make sense or how the characters would get to that point. And then finally it was last season when they got to that, and I was like, oh, that's okay. And it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was.
It makes sense, yeah, but it definitely speaks to how you would have to, like, you pick up an out of context spoiler from like years down the line. You're like, what? How the hell does that happen? And then by the end, it's like, oh, makes sense.
Yeah. And speaking of season 7, that is actually one. When we get there, we'll be splitting that up definitely into 2 parts again, because that is the only other season that's also 16 episodes, and they split similarly to this first season. They split it up, 8 episodes each year, but I think I'm gonna stick to. I think we're also gonna split up season 2. And the season is 13 episodes as opposed to 16, but it has 2 very distinct like sections of story. So yeah, and then after that we'll probably fall into a 1 season per stream pattern. But yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, these are long episodes, so I have no objections to breaking things up just to make it a little easier on us. But yeah.
Well, at least now you know. So in the future, you'll make sure to make plenty of time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had weeks to prepare for this. I just was like, oh, I want to watch it a little bit closer, and then I finally get down to it, and I'm like, oh shit, I need to actually put in multiple episodes at once.
I knew how long the episodes were, and I still waited until the last minute. I didn't start my rewatch until yesterday. And so I actually watched 5 episodes back to back last night and then watched the last 3 today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward now to actually getting to some of my other shows that I'm watching. I haven't seen the last 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again because they dropped 2 episodes in one night. And so now I can finally watch that and then watch a new episode of the final season of Outlander.
Yeah, which I'm sure is interesting for you, as you said, going back to season 1 at the same time you're watching the final season. But I'm sure you'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone who tuned in tonight and joined us. Again, would love to have you back the week after next when we finish up the season, and would love to have you in the future for all the wonderful future Star Wars and movie content that we're going to be doing. So yeah. I hope you guys have a wonderful night or day, depending on when you're watching this. And yeah, I feel like I wanted to mention something before we signed off, and now for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. Isn't that always the way? But I don't know. I'll just do the standard. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe.
Yeah, which our numbers have been going up a little bit. So we thank you for that, everyone. And yeah, if you look forward to anything that we have coming up on the horizon, we always we're going to keep rolling on with this all throughout the year. And and most of it will probably have some kind of fantasy or sci-fi bent to it, because that is kind of where our hearts lie. But if that's your vibe, then hopefully you'll stick with us.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, hope you guys again have a great night, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Yeah. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Yeah.